Well, it's 6:30. It's time to begin our meeting. I want to welcome all of you to Madison's Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, Monday, February 12th, 2024. Can we have the roll call, please?
Mark Acosta,
Here.
Nancy Burkhart,
Here.
Carl Eaglin,
Here.
Rick Ferris,
Here.
Scott Baldwin.
Here. Board members, next item is the minutes. Have you all had a chance to look over the minutes of last month's meeting?
I have,
Yeah.
the motion we approved the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. We move on now to renewals of conditional uses. I would note that number 2 on the agenda, Miller Automotive has expired because they've moved. And number 7 on the agenda, that one has expired because they're selling. So the rest have paid. So I move that we renew the relevant conditional use permits.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, and they are renewed. Moving on, we had one application which was tabled from last month, BZVD-23-22, 1497 East Wainer Drive. They are still working out a solution to the issues, and they requested that it be tabled again till our next regular meeting. I move we table this application till our regular March meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's tabled. Moving on to new applications. First item on the agenda is BZCU-24-2, 301 Jefferson Street, Matt Chandler, requesting a conditional use permit for duck pin bowling, a wine bar, and an apartment. Also utilizing available on-street and public parking at 301 Jefferson Street, that's Central Business District. Do we have someone here to address this? Yes, sir, if you could
I'm
give
Matt
your...
Chandler,
Right, and could give your address for the record?
111 East 2nd Street, Madison, Indiana, 47250.
And could you tell the board just what you're proposing to do?
So we are proposing on what I call the warehouse portion, or what used to be Kevin Carlson's workshop across from Circle K on Jefferson and 2nd, to be a 2-story duck pin bowling center with 4 duck pin bowling lanes on the first floor and 4 on the second floor. And then the federal style home that is connected to the warehouse portion that is located on Jefferson Street, the storefront becoming a wine bar, and then the second and third floor of that building to be a 2-story apartment.
Pretty straightforward, and you own that whole thing now.
I know. What are we gonna do with it?
Well, really,
But one thing in your favor right now is that they moved the jail on the hill, so you're gonna have more parking
Yes.
because the deputies will no longer be over there around that side, so that's in your favor.
What's your time frame for completion of that?
We're probably looking at first or second quarter of 2025.
Do it in phases?
Well, we want to open it all at once, so that's our goal. Because the duck pin bowling and the wine bar complement one another, so that's basically, if you're duck pin bowling and you want an alcohol, you would have the wine bar next door.
Will there be any food, or just kind of bar food, or?
Just kind of bar food. We're looking for a catering partner, but we would not be cooking food on site, so that's still to be determined, but it would most likely be through catering.
Okay, thank you.
as you know, conditional uses, you have about a year to get the thing going, or you have to reapply. So you're proposing to get your thing up and running within a year from?
Correct. So we would start this project we've already technically started the demo. The demolition has been completed. We are planning on starting it at the end of March, going all in with the project. So we've just been taking advantage of labor being available during the slower months. So as it starts to pick up around here, it gets harder to keep them there.
Board members, any other questions, comments? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, for those of you, probably some of you are not familiar with these, we have a set of criterion we have to answer to, which are prescribed by state law. We don't just make this stuff up. So let me find it here. Our conditional use findings of fact. Number one, and by the way, he's applying for 3 uses here. Category 583, the wine bar is permitted in central business, so that's not a subject. The other 2 is category 130, which is an apartment, and I'm gonna say category 739, which is the closest category in our zoning ordinance. It's classified as other, but it's similar to bowling alleys and stuff, and oddly, we don't have a category for a bowling alley. But anyway, it'll be category 739 and category 130. So number one, and what I'm gonna do to save time, since we have a lengthy meeting, I'll just make a very brief summary of each one of these and ask if any of you board members have any objections. Number one, is this in fact a valid conditional use? Any disagreement?
No.
Number two, do you believe this is harmonious with the comprehensive plan and so forth? Any disagreements?
No.
Number three, do you think this is gonna be harmonious, appropriate in appearance with existing character of the general area? It's not gonna change it. Any objections?
It's gonna improve it.
Number four, do you believe this will be hazardous or disturbing to neighboring uses? Objections?
No.
Number five, this is the one about adequate utilities and so forth. Have any issues with that?
No.
Number six, this is the one about creating requirements of public expense detrimental to the welfare, economic welfare of the community. Any objections?
No.
Number seven, this is the one about detriments by reason of excessive traffic, noise, so forth. Any objections?
No.
Number eight, this is the one about not interfering with traffic. Are there any objections?
No.
Number nine, this is about losing historic features and so forth of great importance. Any objections?
No.
Having gone through our findings of fact, I move we approve conditional use permit for a period of 1 year with the provision that the board approves parking on public streets and nearby lots. And second, that the board approves this conditional use in case the properties are split into 2 separate street addresses, which is in the same building. That's my motion.
Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, sir, we wish you well. Next on the agenda, BZCU 24-3, 107 East 3rd Street, Jerry Shields. It's a conditional use permit for short-term rentals, historic district residential. This would be under category 581. Yes, sir. If you could-
Hi, I'm Jerry Shields, 201 Quail Ridge Lane, Madison, Indiana, 47250.
And could you tell the board what you're proposing?
Yeah, we're proposing to use the 107 3rd Street as a short-term rental. We have it set up as a 3-bedroom unit, so it would sleep 6 people. Has has 2 parking spaces that are off in the alley, so it'll be private parking. And we're looking to, we want to market it so that it, more targeted to a family, that would come to Madison and, visit and stay there. So that's our, I guess, the target that we're looking to.
So you're saying, just for clarity, there's no problem with parking, you have adequate parking on the property?
Yes.
Because that's always my concern, is parking and noise. And I
Yes.
notice you submitted a set of rules.
Yes, that was part of the requirements for, that would be our house rules, and, we set the house rules up in a way to, try to, attract the people that we want to rent, which is, a family group, and, try to discourage the people we don't want, because we want to make sure that we, are respectful for the neighbors, and like you said, we want to make sure it's a quiet, and we have people there that are respected neighbors, but also respect the property and our investment in the property, and are coming to town for, to have fun, but not to disturb people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed with the 18th one here. There is a noise level city ordinance. We do not want complaints. Violation will result in police being called. Termination of your reservation, security deposit retained. Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, so, that,
Tells it all.
tells the people that, what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's a residential neighborhood.
Yes.
It makes sense.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect sense.
Board members, any questions, comments?
Have you had short-term rentals before?
No, this will be our first one, so we're gonna be pretty selective and, starting out and to go through learning how to, manage the property as well as, select the right people. So, we're gonna advertise it on Airbnb and then, probably on Vrbo to go through their processes. And that'll probably be the only 2 places we advertise to begin with. Once we have a better established process, we have, we have learned more about it, and we want to probably try to do a direct booking site as well. So we have more, with direct booking, we would look to market to people that are coming back to town that have stayed with us before. And
So
try to
you'll
build-
serve as a house manager then? So they
Yes,
would,
yeah,
any problems, they
we'll
contact
manage
you?
the property ourselves, yes.
And you'll be available 24 hours if you need
Yes,
it?
yeah, we're here in town, so we're part of the community.
And I would note that there are a large number of Airbnb type things in this town. And when they come before us, we always require rules, and to date, we've had really no problems. Any other questions, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use? Yes, ma'am, come on up. And if you would give your name and address for the record, please.
We have an original signatures of our neighbors. I don't know who it goes to. Well, I'm gonna read from these comments.
And before you begin, ma'am, we have a bit of legal housekeeping. I move we accept this evidence into the public record. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
All right, Sandy Palmer, my husband Steve and I live at 105 East Third Street. We share a wall with the 107 East Third Street residents. We're asking the Board of Zoning Appeals to deny this application. Based on the section 1116 of the Madison zoning ordinance indicates in part that a variance may be approved under this section only when it will not be injurious to public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. And 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Our home shares a common wall with 107 East Third. We would never have purchased our home if it had shared a wall with a short-term rental. And our ability to sell our home, I think, will be substantially affected if this conditional use permit is approved. Noise carries between shared walled houses. There are several members, we have 103 shared walled houses in the city. It's a beautiful property, 107 East Third is. There's a picture in the packet. It's a large 4-bedroom house, beautiful historic home, 2 large side porches, a lovely yard, and it'll be likely be rented to large groups. We had not seen the rules, I just heard them, but I couldn't hear well, that they were going to limit the number of people, which that is good, because the house could accommodate pretty good parties, and we figured large groups are gonna rent a big house, not a couple coming to Madison for a quiet weekend. Noise will be a problem as well as parking. The house has 2 off-site parking places for small cars, but parking on Third Street is already problematic. We feel the quality of our lives will be adversely affected. There are over 81 short-term rentals in historic downtown Madison and over 166 in the Madison area. We believe approving more will be injurious to the general welfare of our residential neighborhoods. We've spoken to other homeowners who have expressed concern with large parties, noisy guests, even alcohol and drug use. There's a letter outlining some of their concerns attached. And a summary of these comments are in your packet. Where one side of a duplex is residential, conditional use permit should not be allowed for the second side without the consent of both owners, in our opinion. We purchased our home to enjoy living in downtown among neighbors that care about their homes, care about their neighborhoods, and as our neighbors have demonstrated by signing the attached protest. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate your concerns, ma'am, because it is a fact, there's about, well over 80 Airbnb type things now. It seems like the whole downtown is slowly
Changing the
changing
nature
over
of our
into that.
community.
And as I pointed out, we've had many of these applications here, and we always demand a set of rules. And as our staff can testify, to staff's knowledge, there's never been any complaints. Our attorney over there, are you aware of any complaints?
We've talked to some owners that said and I've talked to some owners who've had no problem, I agree. I've talked to some owners, and some are here tonight, who have had complaints, who have complained to the building inspector and have complained to, I've forgotten the name, that does the nuisance, like when the yards are too tall or whatever. Forgot his name.
Does it do it?
Yeah. I'm sure there are others that may want to speak. We also attached a letter to our thing. One of our neighbors has a business office in the area and is also supporting of our position.
Have you had any input in Indiana before? The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body. That's what it's called in state law. And as such, we take testimony about things. And when it comes to property values, one of the primary sources that you bring before a court to tell about property values is a realtor. Have you had any realtors or appraisers or anybody make any kind of a written statement about?
No, and I have talked to realtors, and I've talked to one specifically, and I don't think there's any denying that property values in our town have gone, are rising. I mean, that's a fact, I'm not sure. We bought our house, I think, 2 years ago when we may have been at the top of it, but the only thing that I could get them to say is that, the investment that we're getting in the city is a rational investment. There's a good return on Airbnbs, but for the long-term value, there's nothing that takes care of a home like an in-home owner that will appreciate in the value of a home. But I don't have a statement that says our property, well, they did say they thought it would be harder to sell, but not that it would not be able to be sold when, with, saying an Airbnb is next door. I mean, would you buy a duplex next to an Airbnb? Any one of you?
But there's several homes in Madison where you have rental property on the duplex and the permanent ownership beside it. I mean, if a family of 6 moved in beside you and bought that property, would you have concerns?
But at least you could go and talk to them next door, and hopefully they would have bought there to be neighbors, so.
Well, the
But I
owners-
mean, you're,
But the owners
Totally.
have 24 hours on call, so, you know, I think they're doing everything they can to make this, you know, as harmonious as you can.
like I said, we hadn't
To that-
seen the rules or anything, so I
Okay,
don't
to
know.
that neighborhood.
And then, I have nothing, the people have been, they've been considerate, when they've been there in the house, they've been considerate as they remodeled. We have no complaints about how we've been treated by the owners.
Good,
Um,
good.
They were, I think, considerate, they never, worked at midnight to pound or anything, so, it's just, they
Have
say
there
they
been
can
any,
control it, but when you have a house that has 4 bedrooms, or the house is listed as 4 bedrooms, I don't know how many, we have 4 bedrooms, one is pretty small, we have 3 levels, they do too, so you could have a hide-a-bed, you can have a lot of people in a house, and we think there will be a bachelorette party. I mean, that's who would rent a house, families and people that want more than one bedroom,
what I wanted to ask was, have you had any of those conversations with the owners? Has there
No,
been any
the first we
conversation
had
at all?
ever known when we got the notice in the mail, the thing. I mean, when they first moved in, we had them over and we had a, get together, and at that time, they said they didn't know what they were gonna do, and then they said they were gonna live there, and they were lived there some, and their son lived there, and again, we have no complaints when they were there, I'm sure they hear us, we could hear their dog or we hear them, but that's what you hear when you share a wall in the house, but they were nothing but courteous. And hopefully we were courteous to them, but we have no discussion with them.
Well, I sympathize with you, ma'am, but we're also in the purpose of a conditional use is this board to air publicly these kind of things, and for the board to think that there's a very high probability that the 9 conditions will be met. And typically, these conditional uses go for a year, and then they have to be renewed. And at any time of renewal, certainly, anybody can come up and say, hey, this is the evidence, this is what they've done, it's been horrible. And at that time, the conditional use could not be renewed, possibly, it could be, new conditions applied, all manner of things. We can require written statements that they'll do certain things. And of course, when it's in writing, then you take that to court or here, or you can complain to the city. And there are just many ways that problems can be addressed. So I appreciate what you're saying, and at least for me, it's how far do we go to saying what an owner can do with his land or his property? Because an owner of a house can have
Maybe Mr. Shields wants to come back and
Right.
maybe address some of these concerns.
yes, that would be a very good idea,
Or there may be others that want to speak.
yes. Well, could we have Mr. Shields first?
Yeah, thank you.
I specifically want to ask you, how many people max do you propose to have?
We're planning on 6, right? Because we think that that's a good number. It restricts, like she's saying, we want to restrict. Yeah, yeah. So, we set it up as a 3-bedroom. We plan on 6 people maximum. We think that will restrict the people wanting, and we're gonna also, do a 2 or more day requirement. 'Cause, we wanna restrict the party atmosphere, that kind of thing. We don't want that happening at the property, right? It's a nice house, like she said. It's a very good location. It's a private location. We want to attract people that are gonna be respectful to the house as well as the property. We don't intend for it to be something that allows large parties, right? That's not what we're looking to do.
And is this something that you will ask when somebody applies to rent it for a weekend?
Yeah, so the rules also state that in there, right? The rules have it in there. We're planning on doing that. We're gonna screen people, right? The part of the process is to screen people. We're gonna ask them why they're coming into town, how many people they have, and, try to assess, right? Like, if we believe they're the people that we're trying to attract to our property, right, to rent to. And with Airbnb, you have the option of canceling that reservation, right? You don't have to accept just whoever applies.
Because like you said, it is a very nice neighborhood.
Right.
You do have
And-
one,
And, we can share the house rules we have with you, with the neighbors, and, work with you guys on, try to set some expectations on who would stay there and, how to, make it, beneficial for us and respectful to you, right? So,
if you'd address the board, sir.
yes.
I notice here one of your rules is if guests are suspected of carrying and/or using illegal drugs of any kind, the authorities will be engaged and guests will be asked to vacate immediately. And you also say, because this is an Airbnb community, not a hotel, it's also my home. Are you gonna live there?
Well, so we're expecting maybe 50% occupancy, 50 to 60% through the year, and we would like to stay there during the other part of the time, and be able to enjoy the property as well, right?
And
We've
you-
stayed there through the year while we've done renovations and stuff like that. We moved out here recently because we had to do renovations that just made it where we, staying there at that time wasn't, convenient. It would've been hard to do, so.
And you mentioned about screening guests. I don't see that in the rules here.
Yes, well, that would be part of the application process. Airbnb has a process that, you put your ad up. It talks about the house rules, talks about other things with the community and, marketing as well. And then you have a screening process where, you have to have a driver's, an ID, a state ID. They have other things on there that they're gonna submit to you, right? And then you can ask questions to the potential guest, and, that's part of the screening process, so we would use that as a way to filter the people
So
we
that's
want.
all part of your Airbnb process.
Yeah.
So we'll just put that in the rules here.
And you put no pets of any kind.
No
Would
pets.
it help you to see the rules?
If
Would
you
that be
folks would
helpful
like
for
to
you?
see the rules, it'll be a little hard at the moment. Here they are. And you can go over there, Mr. Patterson, in the, planning office, which is right over here, and he'll be glad to give you a copy.
And I tell you what happened with us, Mr. Shields, because there was an Airbnb next to where I live on East Street. And what that person did, she went to each of the neighbors, gave them her personal number, a set of the rules. If you have any problems, call me at any time. She didn't have to do that, but
Right.
it was nice that she did that.
Yeah,
So that might be something to help
We
ease
would
people.
be happy to do that.
Yeah.
And, that's gonna help us, right, in terms of.
Right, it should help everyone, right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're
And Ma'am, did you want to say something?
Yes. I have some very strong objections.
Could
My
you
name
give
is-
your name and address for the record,
My
please?
name is Carrie Kemper, and I live at 712 East Main Street. I have a neighbor at 714 East Main Street who has had an Airbnb for 3 years next to me now, and I can speak to what an adjoining wall Airbnb that sleeps 8 is like. May I?
Sure.
This is a neighbor impact statement. It talks about all the things that I have to endure pretty much 7 days a week, all hours of the day, that we put up with and disrupts our living with the shared walls. And I also have a small statement I would like to read to you as you review.
If you could wait 1 minute. bit of legal housekeeping. I move we accept this statement into the public record. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose no? Okay, yes, ma'am.
And I am a realtor, so I consider myself a real estate professional as well as a home builder.
And I didn't get, would you give your name again?
Carrie Kemper.
Okay, thank you.
And I am currently working with another zoning board where I had a home that I was building to resell that we are working on zoning because of Airbnbs in that area as well, because of the impact it does have on home values and home sales. So, while you guys take a look at that, I just wanna read a little statement to kind of preface it. When considering this application for short-term rentals, I ask that this board put themselves in the places of the residents of this community who have been negatively impacted by these businesses mixed into residential areas. Take a moment to imagine yourself, your children, your grandchildren, aging parents, or family members owning a home next to a short-term rental that is a constant nuisance and disturbance to your everyday lives. As homeowners, I think we can all agree that we did not sign up for constant chaos, traffic, disrespectful behavior that short-term rental guests bring to our front doors and even inside of our homes. I urge you to take my neighborhood impact statement into strong consideration when you have one of these applications cross your desk and advocate for the hardworking, tax-paying members of this community who love this community and live here for the love of Madison. We purchased homes here for the small town feel in this wonderful town filled with character and history. Our peace and serenity is now being choked out by the likes of the transient nature of short-term rentals. Before you approve another short-term rental application or renew another short-term rental permit, only taking into consideration the positive economic impact, please also consider the people these businesses negatively impact, the housing it's taking away from people who actually want to live in Madison and pour into this community. The people vacationers are keeping awake late hours. That sinking feeling you get when you hear the third set of guests for the week slamming doors and yelling to one another as they schlep into the house next to you. Please advocate for your friends, your neighbors, and residents, and put us first. I wholeheartedly believe there are appropriate places for short-term rentals in this community, and they can be very beneficial to the economy, but not to the detriment of our citizens who call Madison home, and I hope you will agree. And I will now go over my short bulleted list of things that I have endured the last 3 years living next to one of these with a shared wall. Excessive noise that ranges from belligerent loud talking, screaming, fighting, slamming doors, children crying, loud music, breaking of glass. This goes on all times of the day, from morning into the night, and all days of the week. All street parking constantly unavailable, personal parking spots on my property being used by short-term rental guests, guests of short-term rental guests beating on my door and ringing my doorbell excessively, noise arrival and departures of short-term rental guests as they enter and exit the property with personal items such as suitcases, coolers, noisy children and pets, slamming doors, car alarms, and shouting to one another to retrieve items from the property or vehicle, and loud vehicles, pet waste left in my yard, barking dogs, cigarette and marijuana smoke smell, and short-term rental guests using my garbage cans, to name a few.
I certainly appreciate. I have a question for our attorney. I believe that the legislature of the state of Indiana recently passed a law that says that essentially communities cannot forbid Airbnbs. Is that correct? Have I understood that?
I don't think that's fully correct. I mean, you can't forbid them like blanketly, but they're here on a conditional use, so you can consider the use.
But can we, in your legal view, can a local city like Madison say that there can be no Airbnbs in adjoining properties?
You consider them each as they apply.
I guess what I was trying to find out, has the state of Indiana only limited us to to regulating businesses and enforcing regulations as opposed to forbidding classes of Airbnbs?
I think that's a fair way to put it.
So we can't declare that Airbnbs that are put into adjoining units, sharing a wall, are outlawed, but Airbnbs in distinct houses are permitted. We don't have that authority anymore. Am I correct there?
Well, this board doesn't have that to begin with. That would have to be changed at the legislative level by the council and the ordinance, so you're enforcing the current ordinance.
Exactly, and I was just bringing this up to show the problem we have.
I will be going before the other board as well when this one is up for renewal, because I have a whole stack of complaints and a lot of other information that I would be more than happy to share to possibly work with that board to get that ordinance changed as well, to help advocate and protect homeowners, because I have called City Hall to complain about this. They directed me to tourism. Tourism said they didn't have anything to do with it. They directed me back to City Hall. City Hall said you would have to look into it. I recently spoke to Jim Bartlett, and there's really no advocacy for homeowners on this issue and in the ordinance. I did review the ordinance for the city of Madison, and there is not any language that speaks directly to short-term rentals. And as big as a business as they are in this town, you know, it would probably would be beneficial to short-term rental owners as well as homeowners. So there's some advocacy on both sides if that language got updated, so it was a little more clear on what our rights are and what their regulations and enforcement is for them.
Well, there you hit the nail on the head, ma'am,
I figured.
because this is just a little quasi-judicial board.
But if the place next to her, would they not have a conditional use permit
They do.
yearly? And did we ever hear of any complaints with that place?
You're getting ready to, when they're.
But
when
but
it's
what
up
I'm
for
saying
renewal.
is, it's probably been renewed because there haven't been complaints, whereas if there were complaints, then maybe we could have just
It has
gone
been
through this.
renewed, and I have not filed complaints on them because I was trying to be a good neighbor and not cause controversy and conflict with my
Right.
neighbors. I've gone to them multiple times. I have all of my printouts, all of my text messages going to them with my complaints, with nothing being done. The police have been called. It's just progressively gotten worse and worse, and to try to foster a good relationship with my neighbors, I kept quiet. But it's been 3 years now, and summer's getting ready to get started.
Right,
And
and I agree with
I'm
what
gonna
you're
file
saying.
my complaint
But
this
if we
year.
don't know that, then we can't do anything about that. That's the thing, and I understand where
That's
you're
why
coming
I'm here
from.
today to
Right.
advocate for her.
I understand that too, but in your situation, we've gotta know that so that when they come up again for conditional use, we can say,
Right.
hey, you have not followed the rules.
Right.
And so that can make it smoother for everyone.
Right, and I will be here for that. I don't
Right.
think theirs is up until like June, so I
But
didn't
you can
think,
come prior,
oh,
can't
Yeah,
you?
you-
oh.
you're not
oh,
restricted
I
to
thought you
once a
had to
year.
wait until the permit, okay, well then
No.
I will be in touch this week with what I have for that.
Right, because there are plenty that are good people that
Okay.
do have short-term things. And I lived in a row house, so I know exactly how it is with neighbors right next to each other. Personally, I did not have a problem. I raised children there, I had animals there, I had people that lived on the north side of me and the south side of me, so I did not have a problem with shared walls.
And I know a lot of people don't, I mean.
Correct.
Jim Bartlett told me himself, he said, I live next to two Airbnbs myself, and he said, you're the exception, not the rule. And just because I'm the exception and not the rule does not mean I should have to live in constant disruption and
You're correct.
turmoil just because
Right.
I'm the exception. And he's talking about this one sleeping 6, this one next to me sleeps 8. And I would love for any of you to come over one weekend and sit in my kitchen or upstairs when I have my TV on. They have a screened-in porch, and when they're out there partying, I'd love to invite any of you to come over and listen to what I have to listen to. And unfortunately, the noise ordinance doesn't kick in till 11 p.m. I go to bed before 11 p.m. So when they're out there partying, it's very disruptive. They get up in the mornings. They'll start in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock, drinking mimosas, listening to loud music, smoking cigarettes. I mean, I had to call them on Easter. There was a group over there partying on Easter. I mean, it's very disruptive to anything you want to do.
So just so everybody knows, in situations like what you're describing, your recourse is police reports and formal complaints to Joe and his, staff, and that comes back to us, and you can file formal complaints at any time. So if there's a permit out there that's, being a bad neighbor, the quicker we know about it, the quicker we can help you out.
Well, this is the first I've heard about any recourse or advocacy that I've had, because like I previously stated, I called City Hall to ask where I could file a complaint. They sent me to tourism. Tourism said, we don't do that, go back to City Hall. Went to City Hall, they said, well, we'll have to look into that and see who you can talk to. So I didn't even have, there's not even clear direction for a homeowner like myself to turn to find out how to file a complaint or who to file it with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not clear and it's not out there for us. And as many
Point well
Airbnb short-term
taken.
rentals as there are, the directions need to be out there for people to have if we wanna file complaints and get some advocacy.
I sympathize with you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Before I got on this board personally, this was all Greek to me.
Well, it was
But-
all Greek to me too, and
Right.
I didn't come to the meeting when they sent me the letter saying that Airbnb was coming in next to me, because I've rented Airbnbs. I've never had a party in one. I've never had 6 or 8 people stay at one. I've never disrupted neighbors, so it never occurred to me that this was going to happen. And then it did, and here I am.
Well, you have to document everything, I'm afraid. You have to keep lists. In fact,
Yep.
the final, later on in the agenda, we're gonna have a controversy about up on the 500 block of Jefferson Street. And there is a person who got a complete list of police reports relevant to that, and we have it. So, there are ways, but you gotta do the work, and I see you're beginning to do the work here.
Yep, I've got work from all 2023 that I can bring to you.
The Board of Zoning Appeals, we do have some power to bring legal action against people that break the conditions we give. If things appear to be bad, we can require written commitments. And then, of course, we have the power to have executive sessions when it comes to litigation. We do have some power. And then if you don't like what the Board of Zoning Appeals does, you have the power to appeal that. It's called certiorari. You have the power, of course. And there have been battles in the courts that we've had
Yes.
over
I've done a lot of
issues.
research on it. I've got a binder about that thick full of,
We've been in federal court once.
yep.
So you have recourses, ma'am, but like I pointed out, state of Indiana has kind of said localities cannot just blanket forbid Airbnbs.
Yep.
And we do not have the power to go beyond the state, against what Indiana says. So we can make a set of conditions, and you keep an eye on it, you and your neighbors, you document, you call the police, call them every time, till they get sick and tired of you. But you do have the right, but unfortunately, a misuse of an Airbnb, well, a homeowner can misuse his home too. So there's limits on what we can do to restrict or to. We can't just by fiat say, well, you can't do this because
No.
it's private property.
I just was coming for her because I would like to get the conversation started, because as you guys have stated, you haven't had any complaints about this, you haven't heard this, you haven't heard people speak on this. So I wanted to come up today and get on record in a public forum and tell you what I've experienced and what I've endured the last several years, so that you're aware and that, people who are gonna do short-term rentals are aware of, because at the end of the day, those people are renters, and whoever owns that property, you can't control them. I had gals I had to call the police on. I had contacted the owner contacted them. Police came walking up the yard. What did they say? Oh, are you here because of noise? Yes, ma'am, we are. One of the girls, I could hear her out there. Oh, well, he texted us an hour ago and told us to go in, but we just didn't do it. I mean, you can have rules all you want, but at the end of the day, you can't control people, and they can't show up at the property and drag them in the house. And these people are in vacation mode, especially these bigger party houses. And You know, if it was a two-person, like she said, a couple coming into town to have a nice weekend, it's one thing. But when you got 6, 8, 10 people, they're inviting guests are showing up, and it's a party, it's a very different situation. And I wouldn't have a problem with a couple over there, but it's always a party.
Well, ma'am, the way you, if you feel the zoning ordinance needs to be clarified,
I do.
then you begin with the plan commission, because they're the ones that start the process of amending the zoning ordinance. You talk to your city councilman, who, if you don't mind, sir, he's right back in the corner, and he's a good guy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for some guidance and some direction, because I had no idea where to go with this. And I hope you'll take into consideration my statement when you're getting these, and maybe we could all work together and get a really positive outcome for homeowners, short-term rental owners, everybody.
Well, to encourage you, it has been done before. If you remember the Victoria Inn, all that
Yeah.
uproar.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I remember I was at the meeting, the city council meeting, when all the people showed up and unloaded on former Mayor Welch. And that situation ultimately got resolved. It can be done, but you've got to do your work.
Yep.
So, good for you.
Thank you for hearing me, and, like I said, hopefully we can all get together and get a good outcome so that everybody can be healthy and happy.
Does anybody else in the audience would like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use? Board members?
Well, just a point
Yes,
of
sir.
clarification, the way I understand it, if
Yes,
we
sir,
do,
if you'd come back up.
if we do give an approval, if there's a complaint within a month, we can stop this use.
Well,
Is that correct? If we give a 1-year conditional and we have complaints 1 month from now, we can stop this permit.
You have to give notice to the
But,
owner or the property.
but there is a way to stop the permit
Yeah.
without waiting the year.
Yeah, I don't think you can just do it like,
Right, exactly. You have to go through a little bit of a process. Okay, thank you.
and the other question I have for our attorney, to address Mr. Eaglin's comment. We grant a conditional use, there's an egregious offense, we give notice. Will a court back us up, in your opinion, if we,
that's too general, depends on the circumstances.
What is the process if it, in a month or whatever? I'm confused, I just wanted to clarify what that process is. Not that we're gonna need it.
Yes, so the process would be a formal complaint would have to be provided to the office,
To the what office?
to the planning, planning, preservation, and design office.
Mrs. Shell over there?
And that formal is just a written.
It can be written or verbal, honestly.
Yes, sir.
I'm the owner.
Right.
Just-
Well, you've heard a lot of comments.
Yes.
Do you have anything you'd like to say to try to reassure people?
Well, like I said before, we're not looking, like we said, we're looking to do a maximum of 6 people. That means that, that would be including guests, so we don't expect, 6 people to come there and invite 12 more people, right? But that's not
So you're-
not part of what's gonna happen.
But your
Yeah.
your 6 is max.
Yes, right.
So you're not going to allow those 6 to invite 25 of
Yes,
their
yeah,
closest
right,
friends?
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. So like I said, we're looking to do, like other people have said, they've done Airbnb and stuff, like we use Airbnb when we go places. We usually go as a large family, we're always respectful of the property, this is the people that we're looking to rent to as well, right? And we're happy to work with the neighbors, provide the rules, amend the rules, right? And come to an agreement that we think will work for, what our goals are, but also that are respectful for the neighborhood.
So you have parking spaces for, remind me, 2 cars or 3?
Two cars,
2 cars.
yeah.
So
There is
that's,
a garage, but it's a garage door, so there's a third parking place available, but we don't really want to use that because it has a garage door. We'd have to provide other ways to access it for that. So there's two off-street parking that come off on the alley there on the house that we, would provide for that. That's another reason we chose 6, because we think 2 cars, that's plenty for 6
Which-
people to get there.
What do you have in front of the house, like two parking places right in front of the house?
Yeah.
Right on the street.
Part of it. But like they said, it's a crowded street there.
It is.
There's a lot of parking there already. We would prefer that the people that rent the property use the private spaces, right?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
One last chance, board members, comments? Well, then we will move on to our conditional use findings of fact. And this, excuse me one moment here while I sort this out. This is category 581. Number 1, do you agree 581 is a conditional use as established? This time I'm going to ask each board member individually. As established in the zoning ordinance, Mr. Acosta,
Yes, it certainly meets the outline of that.
Mr. Ferris,
Yes, I believe it does.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yes, I agree with that.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yes.
and 581 is the correct one. Number 2, is this harmonious with, in accordance with the general objectives of the city's comprehensive plan and or zoning ordinance? Mr. Acosta,
Yes, I believe it is. Keeping a residence in good condition, inviting tourism into the city, which certainly complies with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Costa's comments, and I also think that, the extensive house rules that the, owner has provided, will help ensure, that it does meet the objectives of our, comprehensive plan.
Mrs. Burkhart,
And I agree with that comment.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yes, I agree, along with the rules and regulations, his 24-hour phone number on that would be great.
and as, in accordance with the zoning ordinance, the fact that 581 is in section 7, that is part of the comprehensive plan. So I think that one is met. Number 3, designed, constructed, maintained to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and such use will not change the essential character of the same area. Mr. Acosta,
I see it having no impact, if anything, maybe more intent on upkeeping the property to make it a desirable destination.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful home, that fits in with the, neighborhood already. The applicant hasn't, told us that he has any wholesale plans to change, the appearance. So I think it fits in the, area just fine.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree. I don't think it changes the character of the area, and as you stated, he plans on living there at certain points of time.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yes, I think it should work very well in that neighborhood.
changing the appearance, no, I think the appearance of the place will be maintained and possibly preserved and included, or maintained. Number 4, hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. Mr. Acosta,
I do not think it'll be an issue. We've had multiple short-term rentals come through this board. As Mr. Baldwin stated, 0 complaints back on it. I sympathize with the young lady's comments earlier, but absolutely believe that to be the exception to the rule for sure, or this would be an ongoing thing everywhere where there's short-term rental properties. I think everything we've seen for the most part of these have been beneficial.
Mr. Ferris,
I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments, and I just wanna add that the House rules are, I think, ultimately important to, meeting this requirement.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree with Mr. Ferris in relation to the House rules being adhered to.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yes, I think it's Mr. Shields' idea of moving in that house probably later on with his family. I think everything's gonna be maintained, taken care of.
with enforcement of the rules, and obviously it will be watched by the public, I think that this one is met. Number 5, this is about utilities, police, refuse disposal, water and sewer, that kind of stuff. Mr. Acosta,
Yeah, I think, obviously, it's operating a resident as it is today, so no issues whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-bedroom home, been there for a long, long time. I see no reason to believe that, any of those things will be negatively impacted.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I see no problem with any of those services provided.
Mr. Eaglin,
I think everything should be good with utilities and services.
and it is downtown, all the utilities and police and so forth are well-served. Number 6, this is 2-part, will it create excessive requirements at public expense for services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community? Mr. Acosta,
Again, see no issue with this. Again, they're, with the, rules as written, conducting, themselves as common neighbors, which is probably something that has not been said enough, in this situation. Communication and understanding between all the neighbors as though, same as you have with your current neighbors. That same level of understanding goes a long ways to make this all, non-impacting.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree with those comments. Again, the House rules, will ultimately be important to, all of this, and I think we can address, add some reinforcement to that in the, conditions when we, make our motion.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree with the prior comments, and I see no detriment to the economic welfare.
Mr. Eaglin,
I agree. Should not be a detriment.
the economic welfare of the community. Well, it brings tourists who may become buyers. As far as harming the resale value of the neighborhood, given the way things are, I don't think it will. I think that that one is met. Number 7, will this involve uses, activities, conditions of operation detrimental to person's property or general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors? Mr. Acosta,
No, again, we keep referring back to the rules and, maybe something we haven't mentioned either is the general intent that the owner has, expressed. So I see it not being an issue of any, noise, traffic, those type of things.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree with, Mr. Costa's comments, and again, I think that we can add some reinforcement, to that in the conditions when we, make our motion.
Mrs. Burkhart,
And I agree with those prior comments, and we gotta figure that we still would have some of those things if a family lived there permanently. So we have to take that in consideration, but again, I agree with the rules that are being placed by the owner.
Mr. Eaglin,
I agree.
and enforcement of the rules should minimize dangers of these things, so I think that one's met. Number 8, not to create an interference with traffic on surrounding streets. Mr. Acosta,
I don't see an issue as the owner is providing, parking for, their guests, or at least a majority of the guests.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree as well. I think the owner is trying to mitigate, any issues with vehicular approaches by, providing parking in the back instead of just, telling, clients to park in front on the street.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I see no problem with traffic.
Mr. Eaglin,
No, I think it's, by parking in the rear, it's gonna just be a natural entrance from the rear. So I think that will help with the neighbors.
and given that there are two spots to park in the back and two right in front of the building, I think that one will not be an issue. Number 9, destruction, loss, damage of natural, scenic, historic features of major importance. Mr. Acosta,
Yeah, no impact on those things.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I don't see any, negative impact there either.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I see no negative impact. In fact, they'll probably just keep the property up or improve it.
Mr. Eaglin,
I agree with the board's comments.
and keeping these fine old historic houses in use increases the probability they will be maintained, so I think that one's met. Well, we've gone through our findings of fact. Now it's time for a motion.
Can I say something before you, is that totally out of order?
Ma'am, if you'll keep it short.
I will keep it short. And I know where the outcome is coming here, your motion is going. I just want to say, in all the, which I don't even know where those listed reasons are.
Let me explain 1 second. This comes from the state of Indiana.
Okay, and I
The
will
state of
look at those.
Indiana passed a long time ago a zoning law. It's section 34-7-900 and a whole bunch. And these are lifted right out of there.
And that's fine. I see the outcome. What I want to say is, after all those are met, and years from now, when the character and the fiber and the whole, I don't know, what we love about Madison is gone, remember that we always voted for these things because they were economically fine and they were, and I'm not changing your opinion, I know where you're gonna vote, but it's just like, the more and more we have of these, it's like people aren't living downtown, we're just a tourist town. I don't wanna go to Nashville and drink on the streets and dance, you know, I don't want Madison to become that. And that's what we're coming, we won't have children going to school, we won't have people going to the grocery store because they're only here on the weekend for quick things. So the fabric of Madison is being eroded. That's all I want to say.
I move we approve this conditional use for a period of 1 year with the following conditions. Number 1, the rules be adhered to. Number 2, a maximum of 6 people allowed inside the unit. Number 3, there will be mandatory use of all screening procedures by Airbnb. And that's my motion.
Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Folks, all I can say is keep a watch. If you don't like what happens there, document it. Call the police. Come to city council meetings. Call your city councilman. Let his phone ring off the hook. Because if there are abuses in any of these uses, when you people organize and you show up and you make yourselves heard, things get done. And I can tell you that because I've been here now 15 years. I've gone to a lot of meetings and I've seen a lot of really bad situations corrected. So it is in your power, but you have to do your work. And also I want to note that to my knowledge, the majority of these Airbnbs, they haven't seemed to cause any great trouble. There's gonna be bad actors, but you have the power to address that. And you do it by doing what I just said. You document, you complain, you call, you be polite, you don't rant and rave, but you tell the lady over there, or, well, our secretary, you go to the office, it's right over here, doors are open, it's your government and your town, and you can, within the limits of what the law of Indiana is, you can affect it. But you gotta do your work. So I'll shut up my sermon. Moving on, the next item on the agenda, BZVD-24-1. This is Winterwood Development, 2536 Michigan Road. This is a variance from developmental standards for a total parking stall amount less than the required 2 parking stalls per dwelling unit. That's all this is. Construction to occur in 2 phases, with applicant providing a total of 282 parking stalls for 192 units of housing. Total parking stalls will be split with 160 stalls provided in phase 1 and an additional 122 stalls in phase 2. So all we're gonna talk about is a variance in how many stalls per unit. I'm not gonna talk about drainage or any other issue, whether the thing should even be there. It's just parking. So someone in the audience come up and address this request for a variance? Yes, sir. Could give you name and address for the record?
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Gabe Fritz. I'm the Director of Development for Winterwood, Inc. Our corporate address is 1390 Olivia Lane, Suite 100, Lexington, Kentucky.
And you're requesting less than the less than the number of parking spaces that the ordinance requires.
Yes, sir. And in the application, you'll see it's divided into 2 phases. So you have the totals for each phase of development. Be happy to answer any questions.
Our ordinance requires the size of the spaces to be 10 by 22. Are you proposing make them the same size as required?
Well, they were saying that was already granted.
Yeah,
Oh,
this,
okay,
yeah,
you
this
were-
property already has a variance for the
You
parking
already
stall
did,
size.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me. Board members, any questions, comments? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposal about the number of parking lot spots provided? One last chance, board members. Then we will move on to our finding of fact. Once again, for those of you unfamiliar, there are 3. They're right there in Indiana law. They're lifted right out of there. This is a variance from developmental standards. Since this is a variance, I'm gonna ask each board member to comment. Number 1, will approving this application be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
No, I don't believe so at all. I see it, you know, the request, the density request that they have seems to be in line with some current practices in other areas, so it doesn't seem to be anything detrimental.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with those comments, and I would refer back to, past, application where this very thing came up, and I went around and measured the, size of the parking spaces at, I think, 7 different retail locations, and the size of these parking spaces and the number specifically are what we have around the rest of our city, so
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree with those prior comments, and in our notes, it says the average number of parking stalls per apartment has dropped to 1.46, which is what they're asking, so I see no problem.
Mr. Eaglin,
No, I think this, is acceptable in all phases of this for new construction, phase 1 and 2.
as Mrs. Burkhart pointed out, current practice is more in line with what he's asking. I see no problem. Number 2, this is use and value of the area adjacent to the property be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Acosta?
No, no adverse, impact. If anything, the continuance of the project, I think, helps the area.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Costa's comments.
Mrs. Burkhart?
No, I see no problem in that area.
Mr. Eaglin?
No problem at all with this.
I cannot see that the number of parking spaces and whatnot is gonna affect Madison. Number 3, practical difficulties in the use of the property, always the big one. Mr. Acosta?
Yeah, I think, this particular, item in the zoning ordinance, plus others that have, had to have been addressed, without those happening, the project simply couldn't take place.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, the truth of this, question we have to answer is that, strict application would kill the project.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin?
Yes, I think it's applicable for this.
Practical difficulty is that perhaps this will cut down on the size of the parking lot. Perhaps this will allow bigger. It just seems to me to be reasonable in modern use. I think that one's met. Oh, we will take a motion.
I move we, approve the application for variance from developmental standards as written.
Second.
We have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin.
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda, BZCU 24 Terry Jenkins, Legacy of Hope, seeking a conditional use permit for a rooming and boarding house. Provide housing to individuals and families seeking immediate housing who are agreeable to sharing the housing space. 524 Jefferson Street, Historic District Residential. Yes, ma'am, if you could give your name and address.
Yes, sir. I'm Tyree Jenkins. My current address is 2226 South Logan's Point Drive, Hanover, Indiana.
And could you explain in some detail what you're planning to do?
Absolutely. I want to give a history of this property, and my brother Jarvis Jenkins is here to just give you some background before I give you the moving forward plan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm Jarvis Jenkins, 118 East Main Street, Madison, Indiana. What this property has been, it has been an atrocity. As far as my sister and I had nothing to do with it. I mean, I lived there from 2010, I think, to 2012. I went to West Africa in 2012 and didn't return until 2016. Since then, the problems we've had at that place has been horrible. I mean, you can sit here and say 30 times the police been called. I would tell you that's all. Is it? No. The place was awful. I'm not gonna sit here and try to give lipstick on a pig. It was a pigsty. I was never agreement on a person that ever lived in that place, and I don't care who it was. Why? Because 90% of the time, there was no application. There was no rules. There was nothing. It was my mother's. It was my father's. My father passed, my mom took over. We never took over. It never was in our hands. Now it's in our hands. The relationship, because of what we are doing and want to do, is what my parents really wanted to do. We've been in our church from day one, since we came to this town in 1974. We were coming here from 1971 to 74 every single Sunday in the church, Pentecostal, helping people in the community, period. Yes, we were across the street from a pig pen when we came here, down in the old Georgetown area. And all the time, no matter what, we still went to the jail every single Sunday and talked to prisoners. That's what we do. We help people. Who I am today is not who I was in 2012. I'm a different person. Things change. The people my mom had in her apartment since probably 2017, 18, 19, 20, all those years, I couldn't talk to them anymore. Why? Because I'm not the person I used to be. The person I used to be, if I go up in that place and they are who they are and they live the way they do, it wouldn't have been a nice thing. Never had a problem with police because I did things that I had to do to not make my mom and my family look bad. But my mom got to the point where she don't care. I get paid to take care of my mom these days. She left, went to California, been gone for 2 months, 3 months. Most people would die if they lost $1,800 a month. I was happy to see her go. I needed peace. That very thing right there, the fact that she was doing what she was doing to let the kind of people live in that place, it was horrifying. Actually horrifying. To drag my father's name down into the dirt because she didn't care for some money, and money that she never needed. We paid the building off in full. We took her totally out of it. Her relationship with my daughter and I, there's days that she don't let me in the house and says, give me the mail. Simply because we took all from her. We told her it's over. My brothers and sisters, I told them, it's done. I'm 7 of 11. I don't play when it comes to the right. And this is the right thing to do, what we're doing to this property. It's totally that. What that property was, it's not going to be close, not even a minimal to what it is. It's a dump, yes, but it won't be that. It'll have people, they'll have somebody in a whole nother different level of the place in a carriage house living there that will make sure every single rule will be followed. She will tell you all of those things. But what that place was, it's not going to be close to be what it's going to be. They're going to live by ways and rules. I'm not saying I'm the one that's going to be in a carriage house, but no matter what, I will be going through there. All of us, I do home health. She's had assisted living. Brothers and sisters, we come and go. And we make sure that when things get put down the way we do things, it gets done that way. We want to help people. There's a lot of people in this community that don't actually get help. And at the same time, you're there to make sure they get that help. I'm blessed beyond measures because of my life, because God. And we want other people to enjoy that same blessing. You know what? If you know better, you live better. People don't know what they don't know because they never lived it. Madison don't have a lot to offer for young people. Madison don't have a lot to offer for people that's getting kicked out of their homes, or maybe they even have a good job, but they're still in a truck because nobody's given them a chance because of their past. We have ways and rules to help people, and that's all we want to do. What it used to be, what it was. There's people that's living on both sides of 524 Jefferson that could not get in the apartment we're going to do. It's that simple. Because I know you won't be smoking and vaping inside the building. You won't be doing it in front of the building. You won't be doing it at the back step. It won't be happening. You'll be going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. You'll be turning off your phone at 10 o'clock at night. This is the way the life is going to be. But we want to help people that's looking for help. We still have a church today, and we will offer that to them. It's not the same kind of church as every other church. We want to talk to people. sit down with them, not be sitting here in a pulpit and telling them what to do, but coming and sitting in a circle to tell them this is how it is. When you live a blessed life, it's easy to tell somebody how to do it. If you know how to make a cake, it's that simple. Follow the ingredients. My life is blessed, and I want to tell other people, just like her, how to do it. How to transition from what you are to where you can be in a short amount of time. Turn your life around. We're not accepting. If you're on drugs and you've had addiction, you're not for us. Not right now. Because when you come in, you've already made that decision. You already showed examples of what you want to be. We're here to help you to make sure you transition, but at the same time, we want to make sure your life is better in the long run. Period. That's all. I told her I'm not going to come up here and try to paint any kind of rosy picture. It's been atrocity for both sides of them. The police, whatever that's come, whatever's done. I didn't go there. I would call my brother in Indianapolis. I would call my brother in Tennessee. Y'all need to take care of this. I'm living right downtown. I said, y'all need to come down. Because if I go over there at this point, I only can pray for them. I'm not going to help them. That all. But y'all need to come in. There's some bad situations. What's done happened in the last couple of years? I mean, police been there night and day in the same week 4 and 5 times. They're more enabling things than they were helping the situation because they wasn't getting rid of people. And they know they wasn't. They were letting people talk to them like they didn't have the right, and they didn't have the right to be living there. There was no contract. They wasn't even up on the rent. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you there was anything good, because anybody that's on both sides of us to come to try to tell us in our property how we should run it, we wasn't running it. What we're going to do is different. It's a difference of a Chinese place and a soul food place. We're not serving rice. We're not doing broccoli. We're not doing what you're doing. Egg rolls is not in our menu. It's a totally different place. I was asked today at 3 o'clock. I wasn't prepared to come here. I didn't go to work tonight because I have control of my life. I get paid over 100 hours a week, and I don't have a boss. I have good God Almighty because I ask for what I want, and He gives it to me. And that's what we want to teach people and show families how they can ask what they want. Just got to live by the rules. That's all. I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
I'm laughing because I had no idea what Jarvis was going to say. So, your question to me was what the plan is. First of all, I need to dispel a rumor that we want to do a shelter. That's what I keep hearing. As a matter of fact, after I did my conditional report, submitted it, I got calls from people. I don't know why it prompted calls. Are you doing a shelter? You got money to do a homeless shelter? Are you doing a shelter? I've never communicated to anyone that this is a homeless shelter and it's for people that are homeless on the streets. This room and boarding, I'm going to call it, I may say sheltering or housing interchangeably, but it's for people that's having episodic situations where they, it could be domestic violence. It could be where we did Dave Adams, and people call the church, they call us, our parents, and they call us all the time asking, do we have some place for someone to go, because my parents, as he said, has been here since 74, and they've had several properties. And in those properties, because my parents couldn't ever really get community help, and like Jarvis said, us adult children were living our lives, and we really didn't help in those situations. So my parents just helped anybody. They put them in the house. They put them in the church. They put them anywhere they could to help them. Even recently, not too long ago, my mom said, well, they called and they want to pitch a tent back here, and I don't want them to pitch a tent. Just let, I know there's nothing there at that house, but at least they won't be outside in the elements. Just let them stay in there. And she actually, and I told her no. And this has been the fight. The Bible says to honor your mother and father. For this period of time, we have tried to work with my mother, and some of you know my mother, okay? And you know It's not an easy thing. So we in 2020, before any kind of unsafe letter, blight elimination, we were developing the not-for-profit. The not-for-profit, the church had been dissolved, actually. So because the properties were in the church's name, we had to go through, and this was in 2020, so the state was backlogged with so much because there was just, so much red tape to try to get anything done. So it took a long time to get the church reinstated with the state to transition the properties to the not-for-profit. So now we get the properties in the not-for-profit. And then we started all of them. So me personally, out of my personal funds, I have taken $46,000 to secure these properties. Not with rehabbing, just securing them out of my pocket, $46,000. And as Jarvis said, we are not our parents. This is a different generation. I'm blessed. I'm professional. I'm a professional. I have a degree. I'm an educated person. I have rehab properties in Hanover. I have 3 properties in Hanover that does not have police reports and complaints, and they are debt-free, and they have been completely rehabbed because I know what I'm doing. And I have a degree in psychology and in business. My degree in psychology has afforded me to do social services. So I'm not the person that's going to start a program that's going to be, as Jarvis said, something you have seen. It's the difference between Chinese food and soul food. There is just no comparison. So with that being said, what we are offering is room and boarding to individuals who may have a episode. They are not on the streets. They may have, like I said, domestic violence. They may have come to Madison and they have a job. I get calls just recently. We have a man with 2 children that's living in their truck. He has a job, VSG or something. That's like, if this room and boarding house was done, they thought the property was done, this is where they would go. This is where someone that's having a situation that they're getting put out of somewhere, they can go. This is not the indigent people that's marching around downtown that we see all the time that was in the warming shelter. Those are, they call street what do they call them? Street people. Street people, but there's another term for it. So that's not what this is for. That's not what this is for. This is to help people and families, and this should help with some of the housing needs, particularly in downtown, and particularly, if you know about the Georgetown study, one of the primary things is housing, but that's all over the country, as you know, that there's so many people that need housing. In my properties, when I just recently rented one, and this is a good example of what we're trying to do. In my properties, I could charge $1,200 or more for a 3-bedroom. I don't. I charge $950. Why? Because I understand a family with 2 children paying out $1,200 and the expenses that they have and the utilities and all the things, that it would be a hardship on them. I can afford to take $950 versus $1,250, but for doing that, I had like 260 applications for one. This has been going on since 2020 because a lot of people have turned their properties into Airbnbs, and a lot of people sold their properties because the market went up so high. I didn't sell. I could have sold. They're nice, they've been rehabbed, and a couple of them, my parents had those properties. So when I had the 260, and this has happened over and over again, I prayed. I said, Lord, who do you want to bless with this property? I can't go through all of these. Who do you want me to take in? And this is what he said. He said, look for a male with a family. And so I said, okay, that will narrow it down, because most of them were women, and there's a lot of resources for women, because they generally have their children. There's not a lot for men. And so I rented it to a man. He's like, why did you choose us? Why did you choose me? And I told him, I said, because the Lord said, look for a man with a family. So What I'm saying is, we're trying to do a service that will help people, but they don't have to pay. And another thing they were saying, wow, somebody's not trying to get over on everybody and charge excessive rent, because that's what I wasn't trying to do. And that's what we're going to not do at this room and boarding. It's not charge an exuberant amount of rent if you're trying to help people. At the same time, it's going to be managed, it's going to be supervised, because we don't want to put money into the building. This is a beautiful building. I mean, it's got wood floors. I mean, the charm, the quality, and the condition of the building, other than the area that is dilapidated, is beautiful still. I mean, the wood trim, the wood floors, the molding. There is fireplaces in every area. It's a beautiful building. It's a wonderful building. I would actually live there if we didn't have the neighborhood and the things on the side the way they are. Consider what else we could do with this property. But when you have the two halfway houses on the side and you have that kind of people there that need help with their transition, right, back into the community with substance abuse, there's a lot of programs for mental health and substance abuse. We're trying to help people who, and I told Ms. Reynolds, I said, we can probably help some of your people. They said they have 30 people on the waiting list. I know they want the property and so forth, but we want to help another population. We want to help another population. So that's why we're doing the room and boarding house. Did that answer your question?
I want to take a moment here before we go on.
Okay.
Some legal housekeeping. We've received a number of documents in opposition from Eric Dodge and Melanie Fox, incident reports, 525 Jerry Lane, Michael Zink, Jonathan Simpson, Lori Taylor Schulte. I move we accept these documents into the public record.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay. Questions?
How many do you think will be in that house?
We have 2 suites. Right now, since 78, this house has been multifamily. So on the property, there's 4 separate units that have complete separate bathrooms and so forth. And the way the property is, there's a suite on the top level, on the bottom level. So based on the square footage that's required by the state for each individual, which I think is about 50 square feet, based on that square footage, it could be up to 12 people.
If this goes through, will there be someone there at that property 24 hours a day?
Yes,
to
this is
make sure?
definitely 24/7 supervision. And what we propose to do is the property in the back that we're rehabbing, the cottage house, we want an overnight person. And we're having monitoring. I mean, I did assisted living for almost 15 years, so I understand having to have supervision to make your rules and regulations and your property secure. If you don't have supervision, then there's no chance of what you are proposing that you want the outcome to be is going to happen, because you have to have someone, as Jarvis said, to follow through with what your services that are being offered.
And you say it's a rooming and boarding house. Boarding means food, so are you gonna have a kitchen and a kitchen
It has a
staff?
kitchen downstairs. It has a kitchen and a common area. So downstairs, I want it to be the common area, which is really huge. There's a bathroom down there. There's a nice kitchen and living quarters in the front of it.
And what will be your criteria? You didn't have a spelled out printed criteria that I saw for who gets admitted.
I believe these people are going to be referred. You know, these are people that are going to be referred from Safe Passage or like Choices or different programs within the community. I've reached out to people who are really in the trenches, the churches, and like a Dave Adams and people, Pastor Straub. I've talked to those type of people that will really be referring people to us. I believe there's going to be a relationship, like I said. These people are going to be looking for help and services for their immediate needs for displacement. So unless they know about us individually, they will come referred with partnering agencies.
A little while ago, you said you're not going to do drug rehabilitation or
No, we're not offering
alcoholic
any services.
rehabilitation?
We're not offering any services. We will offer referrals, wraparound services. We will want to make sure if someone comes into our setting that we have the resources. I used to work for Lifetime Resources, and I was a service coordinator and a care manager. And what we had to do, kind of like 211, you have to have a plethora of help agencies to know what services that person may need. They're not just coming, in my mind's eye, they're not just coming to, if you're in a situation you need help. If you're displaced suddenly, you need to know, do they go to Batesville where a women's shelter is? Do they stay because they want to stay in the community so they can stay for a period of time because it's room and boarding? That's the difference also in a shelter is you can stay 30 days or something and you have to get out. That's not always helpful when someone needs to be in housing for maybe 90 days. This is more like transitional housing with services in place.
Right now, your property, the way I understand it with my notes, is that it right now is deemed unsafe.
Yes, it is.
What are your plans to make it safe?
I think in the document, we included the structural engineer's plans to how to bring the property and the area that's dilapidated where the wall has come down. So we have talked to a masonry person has given us an estimate on what they're going to do and their cost to rebuild, and also to restore and restructure that area that is
I would be hard pressed though to approve anything that is deemed unsafe. Now, if you went out and you corrected all these conditions and you came back, then I might be more favorable to your application, but right now it's unsafe. That's what I see.
Well, but that's the unsafe part of it, because we're not getting ready to offer services. We're trying to get the conditional use, so we'll know what we're going to use the building for, so how it's going to be utilized, so we have people who has offered up to help us with funding to do the room and boarding. So it's all like one can't be done hardly without the other. We need to know that we are going to be able to use this building for room and boarding. It's not going to be room and boarding until the house is rehabilitated.
I can't prove anything it says is listed unsafe.
Okay. Well, that's already in the plans, and you have that in your documentation.
But right now, it's unsafe.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's what Jarvis said. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely.
So by us giving you approval, you can actually put somebody in it tomorrow.
No, it's for the use of the building. It's not for the.
That's what my mom would do. That's not what we would do.
Okay.
Well, she would put somebody in the. Well, I don't know. She probably would. Don't let them be in the streets.
Let me interrupt here. We can make an emotion. Should the board decide to approve a conditional use, it can be contingent upon
Oh, that would be great, because that's going to help with funding.
We can make contingencies, and we frequently do.
That would be great, because that's going to hinder us from getting the funding if we
Actually,
don't
to
know.
address Mr. Eaglin's concern, you could just repair the building, make it nice, and you have the additional alternative of simply selling it to somebody, and then taking the proceeds of that and go someplace else and start a ministry. Wrong word, excuse me.
I've heard that for years. Why don't you sell the building? That has been the underlining recommendation from everybody on the council and everybody in City Hall. I'll put it that way. That might be all inclusive. That has been the recommendation. But, this is legacy, and I'm on assignment. It's not about money at all. It's not about, I didn't have to put $46,000 into it of my own money. So this is not a money issue at all. This is not a money issue of trying to make money or get money to do something with money.
A number of people submitted some objections. I assume you read those.
No, I don't know anything about that.
You can, it's public record now, so you can get copies of them from the building office.
See if there's anybody from the audience.
Why don't you sit down and just glance over those, and we'll have people from the audience come and
okay,
speak.
okay.
And you'll also hear, I'm sure you'll hear, because the objections fall into several categories. One is a history of neglect. Another big issue was insufficient resources and experience to run something like this. Another was a poor record of rehabbing other properties. Maybe you could answer that. Was that all under your mother's? So you're saying that one neighbor actually went and got a huge police report, a list of a whole mess of police calls, and you're saying that's when your mother was in charge of it? Your parents, okay.
If they're gonna respond, somebody needs to be at the podium.
Right, oh, sorry, excuse me. Right. So you're saying that all occurred when it was under your parents' control?
I won't say my dad, I would say my mom would not relinquish, even when we put it in the not-for-profit. I literally, went to the court, thinking my mom was actually gonna show up because we don't have a relationship. She can't stand me. My mother does not like me because it came down to, what are we gonna say when we get pulled? Like now, what are we gonna say? Well, mama said, well, mama did, you see. So I literally had to go to court, to have people just put out that, you know, there, people were living in there. I mean, it was just bad. It's just been bad. So, yeah, it's.
When did you, take control of the property?
This year, when I had the last people that she had put out, that she had in there, and that was a fight. But I went to court to do it, and I had to keep telling her it's in the not-for-profit's name now. You couldn't make her understand that she just didn't want to. It's kind of like somebody with dementia. They don't want to lose their life because they feel like they're losing who they are. You know, my dad's gone. The church is not open today, again because of me, because it's being repurposed. So, you know, she feels like everything's been taken from her, and it has, but it's necessary.
What month was that? That was, do you recall?
That I went to court, it was maybe June, July in the summer.
So July of 23?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, why don't you sit down and you can look over
Okay.
those documents, and I'm sure somebody's gonna come up and. So we'll open it. If anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against, just come up. Give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Eric Dodge. I live at 520 Jefferson in Madison, Indiana. I wasn't sure if I was gonna make it today in person, so in advance, this afternoon earlier, I sent, my written comments to Joe and
Right, that
Cole. They
would
may
be
have shared
these.
them, yes. I'd like, before I read some of this, I will not read all of it. I'd like to ask the board, in light of Ms. Jenkins' comments, to please take a look at when, in what year these properties downtown were transferred to the LLC, and when her name began to appear as the chief officer. I'd like to have an open and honest conversation about these properties, and I appreciate the honesty from Mr. Jenkins off the top. But let's in the spirit of honesty, understand whose name was on these properties and when. My statement begins acknowledging that I received the certified letter identifying, or the intent of the conditional use permit. You already read the purpose of from the permit itself: rooming and boarding house to provide housing to individuals and families seeking immediate housing who are agreeable to sharing the housing space. We oppose the approval of this application. We have lived at 520 Jefferson for 9 years. We're slowly rehabilitating 518 Jefferson, which we also own. And we also own and maintain 314 East 4th, which is in Jerry Lane, behind our two properties. We rent that. The rental house, because of its proximity to what we call the garage apartment at 525 Jefferson, and our proximity with our backyard and gate to that carriage house or garage apartment, we've witnessed, and much of that was documented in earlier emails from neighbors, blatant neglect of that property, both 524 Jefferson and 525 Jerry Lane. The owner of the properties, the applicant for this conditional use permit, has demonstrated zero interest in improving the property in question, and through the neglect has fostered an environment for property squatters, package theft and vandalism, substance abuse, domestic disturbances, dumping of trash, and surely the reduced economic value of other properties in the neighborhood. We own multiple properties in the historic Georgetown neighborhood. We take seriously the role of preservation. We don't have tons of money. We have put thousands of dollars into these properties very slowly, trying to make them better, and the neighborhood, one house at a time. We have a lot more to do. The applicant for the permit has allowed 524 Jefferson to crumble to the point where it's unfit for inhabitants, as they acknowledge. And 525 Jerry Lane is a condition only for a revolving door and a platform for domestic disturbances. There's been absolutely no evidence that the applicant would operate this homeless shelter or boarding house, however you care to describe it, any differently. The Georgetown neighborhood would be best served if someone else owned this property, to be honest with you. Somebody who cared about it. We believe the Georgetown neighborhood deserves better. I did request under the Freedom of Information Act a list of police calls only in the last 3 years, going back to 2020. Like I said, we've lived there more than 9. The carriage house or the garage apartment is a particularly interesting list. 2023 was mentioned by Ms. Jenkins. If we start only in 2023, the list includes stolen vehicles, domestic violence, breaking and entering, animal problem, a recreational fire, whatever that means, harassment, civil dispute, fight with no weapons. It's a long list, as they acknowledge. I appreciate that. I also pulled calls for other downtown properties that they own: 705 Walnut, 921 Walnut, and of course the property that is in the application, 524. Of particular note, in 2021, the Jefferson House, which is right next to ours, we have a decent relationship with Jefferson House, I'd like to believe, had a small fire in the upstairs. And we evacuated our building, shared wall. Turns out there were squatters in 524, and those squatters came rushing out, of course because of the fire, which surprised everybody, including the police and the fire department on scene. They promptly headed for the hills or wherever they went to avoid having a conversation with the police. At that point in time, again, this was about April of 2021, I believe the ownership of the property finally did something about the squatters, told them they couldn't stay there anymore. So they started living in the car right in front of our house for a while. That's when package thefts began. The urination on our front step began. That man who was known on the street as Dingo was eventually murdered on their property, 705 Walnut, which I believe, according to public records and Madison Courier articles, has a lengthy history with the city as one of the mayor's most blighted properties. In 2023, not that long ago, article in the Madison Courier about the neighborhood being displeased with the progress of the work on 705. We have a long list of rebuttals to the application itself. Some more minute than others, and I'm happy to take questions at any time, but you have the document and you have the police logs. Thank you.
Would anyone else in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed? Yes, ma'am, certainly.
Well, like he said, he was just repeating what we just said, right? And anyone else can come up here with as much information because it's all true. I mean, yes, that's true. That is right. And we do have multiple properties. There was, what happened is they took the church, which was paid for it, and all of these properties that was in my parents' name. They took the equity out of the church and they used it on all these properties. So when the not-for-profit finally got up and running and took the properties, what we're doing now in rehabbing the properties, yes, it does take time. Just was awarded, another grant today, taking that and doing things right. We're doing things right. So what we're having to do with the city ordinances, not knowing that so much had changed with the city, that the HDR, and you have to go through these kind of programs, and the time that it takes. So we've had to get engineers, architects. I'll be back here frequently this year because we're just in that mode now of doing the work. So thankfully this is a year. If it's not done in a year, if we are here this time next year and they can say this, then they have grounds. You understand? If we're here this time next year and these properties are sitting the way they're sitting today, then yeah. So they can come up here. He said everything that is true. I mean, Jarvis said it. They can come up here and just be redundant. It is true. There's no point of wasting your time, their time, because, it's true. That's the way has been. I saw in one of these, it says that my family is the predominant people, the only people on the board. It's kind of like we're having to get the city's approval. We've done a lot more work and preparation. I have here and I didn't know what this meeting actually was going to consist of, but people that from the community that's going to be on our board. But it's kind of like it's in theory until we have this conditional use to be like, this is what we're doing. This is the program versus we're going to do this. We might be able to do this. We can't say what we're doing until we get, rather it's contingent, conditional use, or conditional use to put the vision, the mandate, the ministry, the service, the help to the community in place. They can come up here with a boatload of stuff, and I could too, but for what?
Well, you see, ma'am, you just said that you gotta have a conditional use first, but in order to grant one, the board has to know exactly what you wanna do.
Right.
So you gotta bring all this stuff out first. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, you have a list of people that could be on your board. Are they on your board? Is that a done deal? Could you submit that list to the
I can
public
absolutely.
record?
I can submit I can submit our professional list. I can give it to you now, and send Joe a copy that he submits to everyone. It's an overview of the organization structure. We have an advisory board and we have advisory professionals. You want this? So, but like I said, it's kind of in theory until we can say we have a condition, even if we get a contingent conditional use, if you're going to do this, then contingent upon making this building safe and doing the rehabilitation, so we can go to the individuals that we have said this is what we're doing. They say, okay, yes, I want to work with you. Yes, we're willing to work with you. Yes, we got the vision. Yes, we're in your corner. You have our support. So if we have a contingent conditional use, that would put us in a position to fill out the boards, the advisory boards. We have made the contacts. Actually, Ms. Reynolds, I thought was gonna, for a minute, be on our board, but when we went to the building with the building inspector, I'd invited her and her dad came, and the fire marshal and some other people. We took her crew in, and I'm all excited. This is what we're gonna do. Scott again said, I want this property. I want this building. And we have tried to work with them before through Jim Coulter. There's like, short of them taking full possession of the building, the whole idea of working together to serve the community that needs transitional housing that they may not be able to serve, or that may be on their waiting list for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason. He emphatically said he still wants this building. So she was just very nice. We talked many times, and yes, I'll work with you, and this is going to be great. And then, it
How
fell
long
off.
have you been in control of this building?
How long have I been in control of it? Since I had those people put out in July.
What was the date?
I think it was July.
When did you
22.
assume property?
When did we assume the property?
When did you assume the property?
When did that not-for-profit put the deed?
When did you receive ownership of this property? 21, 22?
No, it was the end of 2022, I believe it was, or the first of 2023.
We're looking at a year and a half. Correct.
Yeah, probably a year and a half.
And it's still unsafe.
GIS says January 31st, 2022.
2022, January 31st, thank you.
January.
Yeah, 22.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
Chairman over here. I'm just a board member. Thanks for the promotion, Jarvis.
Yeah. The fact that she wants to do it, I mean, there's 11 of us, and you gotta realize when a parent's on something, you have a whole lot of heads involved in it, and I mean, she's here. The fact that she wants to, I mean, when I have something in mind, I wanna do it. I mean, I've been on her, family been on her. The fact that she is so compelled to help people for this cause, there is no plus for her. I'll tell you that right now. There is zero. To fight to get this done, I mean, I don't get it. I'm just be honest. I don't get it. Because, I mean, out where she lives, what she has, what she makes from it, and it's not money. Like she said, it's not money. So, I mean, I hate procrastination. So she has had to fight me because I'm right here downtown. I'm amongst it, and it does have my name on it. It does have my name somewhere because I am a Jenkins and she's a Jenkins. For that very reason, but the fact that she wants to do it, I hate for anyone that wants to be against this because it's right. And when God's in it and he's behind it, it's right. And if I stand up here today and I'm saying this should get done, it's right. Because I wouldn't do anything to hurt a person. The jobs that I do right now, people will not believe I do the jobs I do. It's in home health. I walked away from $100,000 plus a year. I was good at my job at selling cars. I didn't ask. I made a lot of money. I stopped doing it because I changed my life I stopped taking. And I got way more when I made 100 than when I make now. A lot more. Why? Because I want to give people that understanding of life. Be nice, be kind, help others, offer something that people can't get on their own. Tell them, you don't know what you don't know. Unless somebody leads a certain kind of life and lives that way and knows. My dad on his deathbed said, Jarvis, stop taking and give back and you'll see you have more. That was hard for me to understand until I get it. I take care of people. I clean people's homes. I walk in people's that are hoarders, homes. I go there 3 days a week to do that, and I don't clean. I mean, he's got a broken back, broken neck. I can walk into any dealership right now. I went down to Coyle Chevrolet. They begged me to come. They gave me cars before I even took a job. I mean, when I say I'm good at this job, I've been everything but an owner of a dealership. So, I mean, for her to want to do this, I'm all in. I want to help her because I know that it'll make a difference in the community. I know it'll make a difference. I have texts all the time on my messenger. I left Facebook and Messenger because of the message I get of people wanting rental properties. And I told her, the ones that sending me messages, I wouldn't rent to one of them. Not right now. And they still send messages. Are you sure your mother has nothing? No, I'm 100% sure my mom has nothing. No ownership, no say-so, no other thing. Her relationship with my mom right now is horrifying. And as God-fearing children, that's not a position you want to be in. My mom don't want to ride in a car with her. She don't want to go anywhere with her. And she tells me these things, and she's the same way with me. Because when I got straight with her, because I take care of her, after her having several strokes in California in 2018, that's when I left the business. It was like, who's going to take care of her? When I said me, my brothers and sisters said, that is not going to work. I said, yes, it will work. Because me, she brought me up in the church. So, like a lawyer going to court to win a case, I used the Bible against her. I said, this is my life. So she can't go against me. She can't believe that I've come to that point of I live by this. I don't have the friends I had 5 years ago. I don't go to places I went 5 years ago. And those people that come and live in these, we want them to have the same rights. At a year down past the road, we hope they leave and they have a fluent life because they had some guidance. They had the recipe for life. That's all I want to say.
Ma'am, would you like to say something?
My
Please.
name's Michelle Jones. Address is 3394 South Hardy Mill Road in Lexington, Indiana. I'm a board member of the Jeff House. And although I do commend the Jenkins family on, what they're trying to do for the community as far as helping people, but listening to them, there's really no solid plan. At one point, you talk about having a domestic violence lady in there, and then a guy that has been living in his vehicle in the street. When you're having an open facility like that, and it being co-ed, how are you going to screen these people when they're coming in? If the lady with the domestic violence and her children are living there, and you take a man off of the street, how do we know if he doesn't have SMI, which is severe mental illness, or a substance use disorder? How are they going to know that? Are they going to be screening these people? I just don't think having a space of 12 people sharing it co-ed is going to be any good. I think they need to pick a plan and stick with it. It's just kind of all over the place, and I don't think that it's going to work when you share a space with co-ed, possibly SMI, SUD. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Amy Hensley. I live at 508 Jefferson. And in preparation to come here this evening, I went out on the internet to do some research on, after reading the application, the MadisonChristianHealth.org. No such thing even exists. There is no trace of it on the internet. So if indeed they have an organization, There's no representation of it. There's no information to be found about it. I wanted to read about it, learn about what its goals were, what its objectives, who was a part of it, because I felt like if this was going to happen just down the street from me and my neighbors, that we had a right to understand what the organization was all about. There simply is no information. So I speak for myself when I say this. It doesn't seem like a very good idea to me to allow them to have this move forward, because there is absolutely no way to research the organization and determine its validity and or its responsibility for its actions. And that is what I came to say.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Brian Collins. I'm the director at the Jefferson House, 522 Jefferson Street. I really love what you guys are trying to do with transitional house. Is amazing. You came to our house, I believe that was yesterday, and looked around for a little while. We do transition housing also. That's what our job is, and that's our ministry as well.
Could you clarify what transitional housing is?
Transitional is, what we do is we take men out of jails, we take men out of their prison sentences, guys that have been dealing with substance abuse for a long time. Also, some of them are not dealing with substance abuse. Some of them, they just have hardship in life. And they come and they transition. And what transition means is you come and you get a job, you get health insurance, you get a doctor, a dentist, you get reconnected with your family, you hold a job, and our transition is 6 months. In my opinion, 6 months is not near long enough. Some of our men come in and they've been, financially hurt most of their lives, and they owe a lot of debts, and it takes time to build your credit back up. It takes time to get your life back in order. So transitioning is a difficult task. I don't know exactly what they're asking for, what they mean by transition, and they said that they was going to rent out a 50 feet? Is that what you're saying is what each person needs? Is that what you said earlier? 50 square foot. Okay, I don't know what that looks like. Our board is a little bit different, and our transitional home is a little bit different. But I loved what you said. You said that you don't know what you don't know, and our board has been established since 2015. Shell, the lady that spoke earlier, she said that putting men and women together is a very bad idea, and we've figured that out. We have the Jefferson House, and we have the Ruth Haven, and they're not beside each other. They're on opposite sides. The reason for that is because men in transition and women in transition should not interact. And that is one of the rules at the Jefferson House, that we do not speak to the women at the Ruth Haven, because the two of them interact. Then next thing you know, they're codependent on one another and they run off together. Next thing you know, it's all bad. So our ministry is to make sure that men learn to be men and continue that path, and they do very well at it. I'm not going to say our turnover rate isn't real. It is real, and people see it all the time, especially in downtown Madison. They see that some of our guys do go astray. Some of them do have problems, and I don't want to sugarcoat that at all. That's the reason why I stand here today. I'm afraid that if it is that you're bringing women in that house that need to be protected. Some of the men in our place, we do vet them very well. I love our men. Our men are very courageous to be where they're at. Some of them are not court ordered to be there, but some of them are court ordered to be there. And the ones that are court ordered to be there, some of them have a really rough background. We do not take in sexual offenders, but that doesn't mean that we know the heart and the intent of a man. I'm afraid, you bring in women and children beside our home. I can't guarantee their safety. I can't guarantee that a man from our house is not going to be rough. I can't guarantee that, because our two houses are right side by side of her house. Our men go from the backyard and they walk across on a constant basis. There's always foot traffic, and I apologize for that, because I didn't really know who owned the property. I didn't know what was going on, and really what we ought to be doing is going down our sidewalk and around your property instead of through it. I should not be doing that, and I apologize for that. But, oh, did you? Okay, well, I appreciate that. The only thing I'm getting at is we don't know the intent of every man. I can't guarantee any safety. Also, I have to tell men that don't have their driver's license yet, you're not allowed to bring a car down here. Our other neighbor here, I'm sure you have a big issue with parking, because I have an issue getting in there a lot. If we're gonna add 12 more people to the mix, we're gonna have to figure out some type of a parking arrangement. Our guys are starting to get their driver's license. They're doing amazing. Our guys are working very hard. But as they get their driver's license, when we hold 20 men, it's hard to figure out where we're gonna park at now. So,
Now, is that 10 in each house?
no, actually, one of them holds 11 and one of them holds 9,
Okay.
according to the fire marshal.
Okay.
So that's exactly the way we do it. I'm not here trying to get your house. I don't care if you give us or sell us the house.
In your house,
Huh?
in your house, do your occupants have their own room? Do they share a room?
They do share rooms.
They
Yep.
do share rooms, okay.
Yeah, I mean, our house is a large home, but both of our houses are large homes, but we are not,
And it was totally remodeled before
yes.
residents were allowed in, correct?
We had the fire damage, as was stated
Yes.
earlier, and it had to be completely remodeled.
Well, even the
before.
one on the corner was remodeled before.
It has
residents-
been remodeled,
Yeah,
and
it
we're
has been,
actually
okay.
in the middle of remodeling right now.
Again,
Our
okay.
insurance is absolutely insane. I've been fighting with our insurance for weeks and weeks and weeks. They want essentially complete restoration of both homes, and we are very self-sufficient. We don't get a lot of grants. Maybe we ought to reach out a little bit more and try to do some of that, but we are self-sufficient. Our rent is $150 a week for each man to live there, and that's room and board, and it's almost impossible for us to do much more than pay the bills. And
But you provide more services than room and board, is that
Absolutely.
correct?
we offer.
So that's the difference between you and them.
I don't know what their idea is. I don't know.
I'm kinda confused too, cause what they're saying is just room and board, room and boarding house.
Well, she mentioned.
In the application, I believe that's what was for, wasn't it, room and boarding?
Rooming and boarding
Well,
house.
she mentioned she had a psychology degree and they
Right,
was
and
gonna
that's
have
where I'm
staff on
confused
board.
with that.
So I'm gonna guess, isn't that what you said? Oh, you don't have a psychology degree? Oh, I thought you said that,
But
I
I
thought you
think
said
that's
there was
the
gonna be a
confusing
house
thing.
manager in the back of the property taking care of it on a constant basis. Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure they're gonna, maybe have classes and stuff like that. No?
See,
Oh, well, I
that's
don't-
where the confusion is. I'm confused about what they want too, but your services, you have services, you have room and board, you've got, tried and true,
You're
rules.
transitioning,
right,
correct, and not just boarding.
No,
Right.
it's not a house that you come and rent, it's a house that you transition
Right.
from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big difference.
We offer, we got a lot of our resources. We do Celebrate Recovery. We do stuff down at the Recovery Cafe. We offer plenty of training. Shell Jones, the one that was up here earlier, she is the Recovery Cafe lady, and she does a whole lot of our training for us. They're a very great resource for our community. Also, we do our very best to provide plenty of training. Yeah, so we do a lot of that. I do appreciate your heart. I thank you for all that you're trying to do. And our community does definitely need more. It does. So, our houses are not big enough. We're actually thinking about, trying to move to Hanover because there's a much larger building there that we may be able to obtain at some point. So hopefully the between 15 and 30 people that's trying to get into our house, hopefully we can maintain that at some point. So, that was all I had to say. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Michael Bobo. I live at 522 Jefferson Street. I'm a member of the Jeff House. There's something that I don't understand about what she was talking about when she said that the property had been transferred from a church and put into a not-for-profit. Because there's a difference between not-for-profit and non-profit. Non-profit uses its money back in the people and the programs that it's doing. For not for profit or non-profit doesn't do that. It expects to have money go back to itself as profit. And so in that situation, it allows for people to still get grants, but to also have expense accounts as far as like how much you pay people. And like I live at the Jeff House and I stay up late at night and kind of watch over both at night. And it's a pretty busy area, not really from the guys, from the rest of the neighborhood, like the drug activity. There's a lot of ambulances in the area. And it just seems like the way it is, there's a lot of activity going on there. We have several of those bed and breakfasts across the street that just fill the parking on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, you know. And so there isn't a whole lot of space available that seems to do much more than what's going on there now. And I've been there almost a year, and I'm finally getting to transition out through the Section 8 housing. And so there's stuff like 211 that has programs. There's the OBO that has programs. There's a lot of different housing opportunities. And what I experienced through the Section 8 was that I'm disabled, and so that qualifies me. But I was getting, and being in transitional living, I still qualify as homeless. And so that put me on a waiting list in a different spot, but there were still people passing me up. And so they adjust that, and they even have a rapid housing that these people can apply for. And so I've been learning a lot about how that all works. And the OBO has that. Plus we have the Salvation Army down there. They have a lot of outreach of stuff in that nature too. But not only that, the county's entitled to a domestic violence shelter. I mean, that was put in place in 1989, that all counties could have a domestic violence shelter. So I'm not sure what purpose it would serve. And, you know, like you're talking about, is the temporary permit so that they can form the board for the not-for-profit, or is it to get grant money to rehab the facility? Is there anything concrete in that? You see what I'm saying? And so you give it, and how long do these people, does it end up being like the rent a room above the bar down here, and it's just whoever, whenever? Does it turn into that? You know, because what if you have a single dwelling, say you have 3 families in it, and you have 4, and 4, and none of them can get along? Or are they going to be there to where it's just a place that you rent out for not for profit, which means for profit, and grant money? That's what I'm confused on, because there's a lot more needs when it comes to the actual homeless and stuff of that nature. There's, you know, I've been in a few of the county commissioner meetings on the drug rehab and the facilities and stuff like that. Me and Brian attended that. And so we had looked at some of the study from that, and it was done by the Cincinnati University, and the numbers were horrible. When we got to when you know and live on I've been on the streets for 5 years, you know, and so I've had a real eye-opening on sometimes that the facts aren't really the facts until you know the facts. And then you made a decision to do nothing again. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tyree, would you like to answer some of these?
I'd love to when everyone's done. Is there anybody else? Sam, anybody else? I just let them all, you know.
I'm Georgia Hall, and I live at 506 Jefferson Street. I feel like that there just isn't enough information to move forward with this. We just don't have details on what's going on, who's monitoring, how all this is going to be set up. I do think safety is an important part of this. If the structure's not safe, that needs to be addressed. I know when the fire happened a year or so ago, it's really scary when you live in these close houses, which we see burned down all the time. You know, we want the houses and the properties to be kept up and to be safe. Because if that road catches on fire, we all stood out and watched that, wondering how far it was gonna go. That's just kind of scary to watch. So I just think there's a lot of things that aren't answered that need to be answered before we can seriously look at whether or not this is something that should be there or not. And I do think that the safety of the building needs to be secure, and all those things need to be addressed before we can make a decision on this property. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
I will, just because I came. My name's Sam Reynolds, and I live in DuPont, 4512 West 1100 North. I'm the vice president of the Jefferson House. My parents are Scott and Christy Coleman. They're local pastors here in town at New Life Fellowship up on the hill. My dad has done jail ministry for several years, and what he experienced back in about 2014 was a close friend of his, was released from prison. This man came to town. Whenever you get released from prison, you can't live with another person that has felony charges also, so that kind of excludes people from their own family's home. Say your mom or dad has had a rough past, you can't go home. So this guy came to live in my bedroom when I was about 14, 15 years old. Had to share a room with my sister because we had someone living in our home. My parents helped rehabilitate this guy. My dad had to drive him to the license branch, had to help him get a bank account, had to take him back and forth to work for about a year until his license, and he had prior driving offenses, until all that, got worked out, and this man could get a place to live. He got a vehicle, he had all his ducks in a row. So a huge need was there. This isn't the only person in Jefferson County. So that's how the Jefferson House was started back in 2015, because there's a huge need for that. So with that all being said, just a little background. I think, some of our guys, they have curfews, so they had to get home. But I've talked a lot with them, and I think it's a wonderful program. I think we do kind of need something like that in town, because there's so many applicants that come to us that we can't accept. Maybe there's somebody that just walks up right out on the street, and it's like, well, we don't have a bed available, there's a waiting list, there's things that you gotta do. So then he would more or less be probably welcome into a place like that, which is great. But I do have a question. If there's multiple properties available, could we maybe take a look at some other ones? This house does need a lot of repair. I mean, it's condemned, I would think. So we'll take, and I'm a builder, I'm a local contractor, so I know that it's gonna take a lot of time and money. Like an architect, engineer, we have the same situation right here with this wall bulging out and about to fall onto West Street right here. We have the same issue there, but it's not gonna land on the street. It's just in the side yard or the basement. So, I mean, there is gonna be a big process to even get that building back into a stable home for even a residential zone for what it is now. So maybe we could just postpone some of this and just work on getting it sound and stable. Like Brian said, we're back and forth paying over $1,200 a month in our personal insurance. I know it's gonna be hard for them to even look at insurance on that property with it being in the condition that it is. That's all I got. If you guys have any questions for me, I can answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Ms. Tyree.
So yes, these people are in the public, and there's a lot of unknowns, because why would they know? I didn't go to them and give explanation of the program and, funding and the not-for-profit. I am going to submit to Joe our, IRS, letter and a copy of our bylaws, and, so I'm gonna give you that, and I'm gonna give you some other things. The property is not condemned. What happened with this property is, the particular area that has fallen in actually is on the side. Looking at this building, actually, I have a picture of the building. Looking at this building.
It's not road condemned, it's deemed unsafe.
Yeah, there's an area of the building where the water, was eroded some brick on one side because, apparently, according to the Madison building inspector, before my parents bought the property, that site was repaired and they didn't use the correct brick and mortar. So when water got in that area, it caused it to collapse. So I'm gonna submit, a copy of the house, and, also some pictures. There is a area of the house, not the house. There is the kitchen area. And so I have some pictures here, even in color, that the upstairs and the rest of the house is very sound. Like I said, it's very nice, and just so you guys can have some of the questions that they.
If you'll take a moment, I move we accept Ms. Tyree's submissions into the public record.
So,
I'll second.
Just a moment, ma'am.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'll second your motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. They are accepted. Okay, you can continue. It's just something we have to do for legal.
So the name that she gave, unless she just misspoke, it was not the name of our organization. So we are a bona fide, IRS declaration. The young man that just talked, that, I'm not sure what his involvement is, just to speak, I guess, not for profit, not for profit. You guys understand what it is. But what I understand with the city ordinances is that you cannot do charitable services, in HDR. So after talking to Joe, and having talked to, Nicole, and before that, Brooke, about what the city allows in these properties is where, the term room and boarding came about. And that was because the room and boarding is what you allow in HDR. Ideally, it would have been more grassroots where you don't have to, I don't know when all of this, HDR and that, section 7 of all of the different,
It's a whole list of
the
what's
things
allowed
that
in each
properties,
zoning
that
district.
properties can be used for. So just to give clarity on the services, like I mentioned earlier, so everyone has a clear picture of what the service looks like. We're not offering charitable service in that, okay, you come in and it's free because it's not allowed, right? We would love to be able to afford to do that, and, I mean, if anyone could just come in, and just help people, but that's not the mission. It is to help people who would be homeless, to prevent homelessness, right? Because if you are transitioning from a situation where it could be domestic violence, and yes, we have an upper suite and a lower suite. We don't know what the clientele is gonna look like because we don't know who's gonna call or who's gonna refer someone, but we don't wanna say this is just for men or this is just for women. What we do wanna say is if there's an immediate need because someone just, had a situation out of nowhere where they were displaced, then there's some place in Madison they can go versus being drove off somewhere. It doesn't mean that they don't have a job or that they don't have an income or that they're not able, if they had time to regroup and to transition into a healthy situation. So, I mean, you can ask me questions directly, but other than telling you it's for people who would be homeless, not for people that's coming off the street because they were, I don't know, whatever the situation is. Most of them, based on the people that I have talked to and the agencies I have talked to, will be referred. Also, we're not offering services because, and my degree is not because when I said I have a degree in psychology, is because I was saying I've done social services since I've been out of school. I had 2 daycares, meeting, counseling, and managing families. I had assisted living, managing a lot of different families, knowing that you have to supervise, knowing what the service is. So I was speaking to my background when I said I have a degree in psychology and I've done social services.
I think, ma'am, excuse
Yeah.
me, what people would like to know is who is not gonna be accepted.
People,
That
right,
speaks, and that,
homeless people who are street homeless. You're street homeless. You're just, somebody dropped you off in Madison, because I heard, that Madison, people are told to come to Madison if you're homeless. I don't know why. We don't have a homeless shelter. I don't know where they would go. I guess because of the services that are in place, the Salvation Army and maybe some other services. I don't know. We don't have a homeless shelter here.
ma'am, I personally would like to see, I would like to see you think this through and give us in writing a list of your criteria for acceptance, who's gonna be on your board, who your network of referring
submitted that to
agencies
him.
is. Well, of course, the board hadn't had a chance to see that.
Right, and I have another document, because I've thought this through, or that's why I'm just getting here. That, I could have been here unprepared. So if, whatever you want, I have planned, and it's taken time, talking to people, for the board, for the advisory board, for the professional boards. So it's been thought through very,
And I appreciate your saying that.
so I'm gonna present to Joe those things you just requested.
Because the primary gist of all the objections was a history of neglect, and you seem to have answered that all those horrible conditions occurred when your mother was in charge, or your parents.
She had control of it, yes.
And now you folk have control of it, and I noticed in glancing through that most of those police reports were like 21, 22, it was in the past 3 years, but you said that you'd taken over control about August of 23,
There has been,
and you haven't had,
yeah, there's, the building is secure right now, as far as somebody going in. I mean, you can get in and out of anything. The back door's open. Like they said, they're between it. You'd have to go into their properties to get into the property. But we haven't had any problems. That back where there's stairs and whoever was living in and out of there, they haven't, since I've actually gone to court and had them evict that whole situation, there has not been any concerns from anyone. I haven't received any calls.
there was another line of objection was a poor record of rehabbing other properties. And it seems to me you're saying that was when your parents were in charge.
For me personally, my record of rehabbing properties are my personal properties in Hanover. So are you saying that you want something, a proof of that?
Well,
the
when
one
we-
on Walnut Street, someone mentioned.
705.
We have 6
Walnut,
properties downtown that, not 6, we have those 2, 9, all of this was a package. They were all together, as I said, in the
705
tied up
Walnut.
with the church. All of these properties were together.
Someone
So
took-
I took 30,000 and bought them out of this.
How long have you been in control of 705 Walnut?
All of these at the same time.
Somebody brought that up, 705 Walnut.
705 Walnut Street is a property that's, has started rehabilitation on it. Again, I'll be coming back before this board for conditional use for that property, but we're letting the architect, they're going to come and do the talking for you guys and the organization that's going to be a part of, well, it's really Indiana Landmarks, a part of continuing to develop what that property needs to look like.
Now,
The
you
permission
own-
that we need to do
You
that
own
property.
the building outright, you said.
All of these properties
They're
are
all
owned.
debt-free. And whenever you might start, you would be you'd be tax exempt, wouldn't you?
No,
No, you'd have to pay property taxes.
apparently,
So another one I'm driving at is,
particularly 705.
well, I'm talking, where the issue today is 524.
524 Jefferson, will it be, I don't know, you have to get permission to, depending on the use of the property, I don't know that.
Because another line of objection was having insufficient resources and experience to operate something like that. But if you paid it off, you don't have a mortgage with a huge payment you have to make.
Inexperience of running something like what? A room and boarding house, I've done it for 15 years. I've done assistant living for 15 years with services, me personally. So, all kinds of objections can be presented.
Well,
from,
that's the purpose of this
Yeah.
board meeting is
Yeah.
to.
But I'm just saying, these people don't have, that are making those objections, don't have information, so I'm willing to
Well,
present.
that's why we're having
So
a meeting.
what was the name of
Yeah.
the assisted living that you ran?
Choice Christian Care.
And when did you run that?
I started it in 2009, and that's another reason why I'm just able to really hone in on all of these properties until last year of March 2023.
And you were the owner of that? And what's the name of the business that you're starting now? That business name?
The room and boarding,
Yeah.
Legacy of Hope, House of Madison. Legacy of Hope, House Madison.
Where is Choice Christian Care? Where's your facility?
I really retired myself. I consider myself retired from Choice Christian Care Assisted Living last year, and I ran that. I had 115 West Second, and the other one was 2226 South Logan's Point Drive.
And were they accredited?
They were certified. They were
Through who?
FASA, Family.
FSSA?
Well, we're having this meeting because when we came into this meeting, we are given a packet of materials.
Yeah,
It
and I wish I
indicated
had
that
more
almost
information that was
excuse me, ma'am.
needed, yeah.
It indicated that almost everybody was strongly opposed to your project for a variety of reasons, and that's why I've been questioning when exactly you took control. And you indicated it was in August of 23, that you had complete control of all these properties where all of these horrible things have occurred. So that line of inquiry that I made is to assure your neighbors that it wasn't you personally that was negligent.
Oh, no.
Because that was a huge concern in these documents that you had a chance to look at, and they're well presented, about dingo and all that.
Right.
And another line is, do you have the resources and experience to run it? Well, you've kind of answered that because you own the building outright. So what you'd have to cover would be insurance, and primarily insurance and property taxes, possibly. So that greatly increases the likelihood that you'll be a success financially.
We have to
in
pay
my view.
insurance now and property taxes now. So those are things we have to pay, and they're always kept up. We have to pay that now. Now, the insurance type will change when you have, liability and having people in the house.
But then I question the resources because as you guys have spoken, it's hard to intermix men and women. And I've worked at the state hospital for almost 30 years. So I've dealt with mental health and that stuff. And when you say somebody calls and say, a family might need a place to stay, and you could put a family here in one suite, but if you have older men in another suite, how can you guarantee there's not gonna be any intermingling or what there, if somebody, I don't know if you do have the resources to deal with those situations, because there'll be many different situations if you don't have specific rules about who can come, when they can come, what they can do, how they stay, for just a room and boarding house.
Did you guys see the rules? Did you see the rules?
I
They're
did, but
very-
I don't know if there's enough rules to address something like that, because we don't even know what kind of people are gonna stay there. Yeah, you say a family, but that could be a family with small children.
We don't know either, so.
Right,
it's-
right, and
it-
that's the
right,
problem,
But
I
it's
think.
case by case, so it's just like.
But I don't
if-
know if you can run it like that, to be honest with you.
Well, there's no other way to run it, because if you're helping people in the public, right?
Right.
And you're trying to help people that have an immediate need, we won't be able to address every need, but if we
Right.
have a family here today, and then some out of the ordinary or something inappropriate comes and we can't take that person in because this is what we have today, then we can't take that person in. It is case by case, and it's based on the rules and the intake form that was presented, that's very detailed, that it stipulates that they will have drug tests and they can't be on sex offender list, and it's pretty detailed. And it is case by case. If we end up having more men and we don't have women, then perhaps it'll end up being, well, you know what? It seems like more men have the need for transitional housing. Or it seems like, well, you know what? We have more women. We'll do this more for women. Well,
So
you
are
know
you
what?
planning on drug testing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
I went through.
Was that even allowed in just a room and boarding house? Is that the rule of a room and boarding house, though?
If, depending on how they're referred, okay, so if it's someone that
But to me, that's not what room and boarding house. I thought a room and boarding house was just providing room and board.
if it's someone that's referred, okay, so we have to look at who's being referred and where are they coming from, right? So if it's someone, say for example, Sam calls and she says, Tyree, we have someone that we, want, can they come to your house? And they're gonna go through the checklist that's there about their same kind of like they're doing, sex offender, what's the drug situation? So it has to be based on the individual's need at that time, and we have to have the capacity to do that.
But they're a totally different thing. They're not applying for a room and boarding house. They're not a room and boarding house, and that's what you're
No,
applying
but they're
for.
transitional housing, and that's
Right,
what
which
room
is
and boarding
different.
is.
But
It's
your-
not someone to
but
come
your-
and
Your
stay.
application is for room and board.
Right.
Simple as that,
Not like
nothing
they're
else.
doing.
No transitional,
No.
no medical, no pre-testing, no pre-application. And your building is unsafe, and I haven't heard one person speak in favor of it except Jarvis. Of course, he's a family member. You do that when you got 11 kids, because I'm from a family of 11 kids. But I think you need to rethink your situation, because I don't think you know what you want. And
Well-
your building is not safe.
No, it isn't.
Okay, that's my opinion right now.
Okay.
I notice on your intake form that you submitted, you ask, among other things, do you have a violent felony conviction in the last 3 years? Yes, no? Are you accompanied by children? Have you been ordered to register as a sex offender? And then back here, you have a checklist, which somebody will presumably go through and check all the information. So that's,
I'm not sure what you're asking for, to give you clarity. I'm not sure what you're asking for. So I couldn't
be
walk away from
perfectly
this
clear,
meeting today
I'd
and
like to
say,
know who is not going to be allowed. I'd like to know who your network that you're affiliated with is. We'd like to know who your board members are. Cause if you say you gotta have the conditional use first, and then you'll figure all that stuff out.
no, I just presented all that.
Okay,
you
well,
just
the board
mentioned to
members
Joe.
have never had a chance to see that. And it would have been a lot better had we
Right,
we had
that's
that
fine.
before, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
I
Board
would-
members, would you like to table this till our next meeting to
I
have
would
a
like to
chance?
ask a question.
Go ahead.
Sure.
What I have heard from you guys is, big hearts and want to show love. But I kind of along the lines with Carl is the details of the plan, how does it work? Like you're saying, it may be people from no real limitation of where they came from. And your goal is to help them. And I hear that loud and clear.
Yeah.
But I think for the purpose of this, we need to understand a lot more of how you're gonna help them, what are you gonna help them with? And again, the qualification thing's a big thing too, because it's not just safety of neighbors or citizens, it's yourselves as well. But I think everybody here is a huge heart and, you know, a God mission.
And
I think there's just some of that we gotta know more about.
If we don't approve this tonight, what is it, 6 months to a year to reapply?
Well, if we made a motion to deny the conditional use, they would have a year, after a year, they could reapply. Or we could table the motion to a certain date and say, we want this information, and come back and supply the board what it needs.
So let me just ask, okay, so what you're telling me is what I'm presenting to say that I don't want to exclude anyone that may be referred for the services at any given time. You're saying that I do need to be more concrete and decide who's going to be excluded.
Well, you need to have a safe building, number one.
Well, the safe building, we talked about that
We
is
haven't done anything about
conditional.
it, so you can talk about it, but you haven't.
No,
done
I'm
anything.
saying to you,
Yeah.
you said that, and he said that it could have been granted on conditional use. The conditional use could be granted contingent upon the building becoming safe. That was how I'm understanding that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I said.
But the being tabled or.
Being tabled means that, say, for example, the board tabled this till next month, and we would like you to give a pretty clear and detailed explanation of what you plan to do. Will the people be in separate rooms? Will some be in separate rooms? If families come in, will they have a room? If men come in, will they just share a room? If women come in, perhaps you could rethink, do you really want to have men and women together? Do you have the resources, as the Jefferson House folk pointed out, to avoid troubles? As a conditional use, we have to, by law, we have to go through those 9 things you heard.
I understand. So I just need to be clear, and I just have to keep asking this because I have all of what you're asking for. I'm trying to understand, are you telling me that what I want to do, if I'm like, we have a men's suite or women's or family and men, separate, yes, because there's an upper and a lower. Are you saying that that's not allowed? I'm just trying to be clear. If I come into the next meeting.
No, ma'am, not at all, not
Okay.
one bit. In fact, if I read the audience correctly, they think that what you're trying to do is a noble act. But all the board wants to know is, we're not saying, no, you can't. We just want to hear what specifically spelled out in writing you want to do.
The mission is good, but there's gotta be the business plan side of it. I
Yeah.
think that's what
The
everybody's
details
kinda
of
getting
it.
to. This is how
Right.
the business side of it will run.
So I'm gonna hand that to Joe before I leave, so you guys can will be able to look at that. We have the business plan, we have the regimen of how things would go, even on a day-to-day, timeline. So, I mean, I've done the work. That's why we're just here. So, if that's, I'm gonna present that, send him the emails, let him send that to you guys. Hopefully we'll get feedback, so the next time we come, all the possible documentations you and I have, what, the public has said, so will that be accessible to them?
Sure, this is all public record.
So how will they can come to your office
Sure,
and
you
get
can come
it?
to the office.
Oh, okay, yeah, so I
But
have
the only
a
reason
detailed business plan,
The
absolutely.
only reason I'm dwelling on this is because we came into the meeting and there seemed to be universal opposition to it, and pretty strong opposition. And in order to clear the air, you just have to be specific. You have to tell exactly what you're gonna do. You have to tell who's not going to be there.
Okay.
You have to give an indication of your network. In other words, you have to reassure your neighbors that, let me give you an example. Over on East 3rd and I think Mulberry, or 401 East 3rd, there was a building that was owned by an out-of-state investor. All he was in for it was to rent it out. There were horrible problems there. It blew up in City Hall and other places, and finally, I think blew up before this board too. finally, the issue was resolved because the guy sold it. There was, of course, the Victoria Inn, which was, well, it was a rooming house, and they didn't have board. That was a horrible mess. That blew up over poor old Mayor Welch. And that got resolved. And so what we're trying to do is to assure all your neighbors that they're not gonna have a situation like that arise. That's all.
Okay,
Nobody's trying to tell you that you can't do something.
okay.
And nobody's denying there isn't a huge need. I mean, I myself once had a house fire, and the whole family had to relocate to a motel. And I see what you're saying, people lose their jobs, people are living on the edge. I mean, you work at McDonald's for whatever they pay, $10 an hour, 20 hours a week, and you can barely live, and you lose that for whatever reason, you're sunk.
I don't know if this helps, but I'm gonna take a stab at it. So, you said here through some previous applications, and you heard some of the questions that we have to answer, to be able to approve or not approve an application. So, question number 3 says, do you agree this will be designed, constructed, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, that such use will not change the essential character of the same area? I haven't seen anything that shows us, what your plan is to fix up the building, to make it fit all of these requirements. That's the kind of information that we need to be able to assess your application fairly and make a decision.
I presented that to Joe, the pictures of, it's a row house, and the character of it is not changing, it's just going to be, the masonry guy has to do just some patchwork and painting, because the exterior of the house is not, dilapidated. There's a wall that's dilapidated that I also presented to Joe from a structural engineer, how that will be restructured. I mean, he presented to you guys, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of that.
And I presented him pictures to give to you guys of what the building looks like, because it's just that area. So the building is going to be as is. The character of it is not changing at all.
But that's just one example of 9 questions that we have to answer. And
Right.
I think what Mr. Baldwin is trying to convey is we're lacking some of the information to be able to answer these questions.
Did I not answer those 9 questions on the you talking about the application?
Yeah.
Are those not answered appropriately?
Well, I don't think so.
To some extent, the board just wants to know more.
Right. I don't have anything to add to those 9 questions.
Well, I think.
But to the program, I understand is what you want more information about, which is
Yeah.
not on the question, so to speak.
The intended purpose of the business that you're gonna run, and those details matter in our decision-making.
Right. So the details is what I'm going to
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
more of.
Yeah.
Specify what you're gonna do, you know, when you have more men, when you, how many staff are you gonna have? Are they going to be, what kind of arrangement to staff it will you have?
We're trying to figure out how to help
The
you.
operations. Well, you've given me only thing I'm walking away from here today that you need is the details of the operations and details.
No, we need the building safe.
The building what?
Safe.
Well, the building, I think, Mr.
Has to be
Higgins,
safe.
Well, I think we can handle that in a motion.
Right, it has to be safe.
that would be handled in a motion, a contingent motion.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm in favor of that.
Well, that's your right as a board member.
That's right. I just think that you need a safe building before we approve anything. Anything that is unsafe is unsafe. You can't put anybody in it.
Okay. Well, believe me, we
And
wouldn't
if
be
it
putting
takes a
anyone
year,
in
it
it.
takes a year. I mean, we can't allow people in an unsafe structure.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly true. And I totally agree, sir.
That's the reason I'm more leaning towards a motion to reject. That would give you a year to get this right, not just 30 days. I don't think it can be done in 30 days.
It's not going to be done in 30 days as far as being safe. There is really nothing I need to do, but if you're going to, with more details of the operations, approve it and on condition of the building becoming safe, then I don't see the problem with that.
I make a motion, we reject the application, BZ. Why? Oh, I'm sorry. But that's where I'm at. You know, I just want you to know right up front.
Board members, what is your pleasure? Would you like to continue on, read our findings of fact? Would you like to table this till our next meeting?
I think we should table it.
So we've had time to review what she submitted.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
We'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion, we table this application
Till
till
our
our next meeting.
Yeah. Second that.
we'll have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
No.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, ma'am, bring back, the board will have time to read what you submitted. Bring back specific details.
Okay. And I have a question primarily for the opposers is, being as what's next to this property is these types of houses. Now, I would never want to live there. I wouldn't even want to rent there. I wouldn't want, what would the what would you, what would they propose that property be that would, I wouldn't even want to do an Airbnb there. So what, other than what they're doing or something similar, I don't know
Well,
what that
ma'am,
property
that's
would
not
be.
a relevant question at the moment.
Well, with all the, so is it in their, writings? Like, because it needs to be rehabbed and to be, bring value to the area, to the community. It needs to, it needs to be resolved.
Well, that's what we hope to do when you bring us at the next meeting.
Well,
specific
like you said, I
information.
want to make sure the neighbors are good with it, so I'm just, with all the objections.
Well, you can certainly, after the meeting, talk it over with them.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. I'm getting ahead of myself. Gee, man,
It's gonna be.
getting ahead of myself.
I've been here since 5:15.
A little bit more old business. Number one on the agenda, 307 East Clifty Drive, staff resolved that issue. Folks, if you want to talk, go outside. We still have a little more of this meeting. Ladies, if you wish to talk, excuse me, ladies.
No, we're leaving. Thank you.
You're welcome. Under old business, number one, that issue was resolved, and the remaining ones have paid their conditional use fees.
Okay, the ones marked not paid have paid? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, number two, number three, 4, and 5 have all paid.
Okay.
And as such, their conditional uses are renewed.
Okay.
And that is the end of our business, unless I've forgotten something.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
You're not going back to the office now? Go back to bed.
See, we saved you we saved you 17 ounces of gasoline.
It's